Good evening, everybody. We're live. Mike Crawford, Young Jerks. We have the Dream Team panel here tonight. Returning Mazza Media.
Good evening, Mike. Thanks for having me back. I'm ready to go tonight. It was an amazing day, glorious day.
Sure was. Something we've been waiting for. And Attorney Mark Bederow back again.
How are you?
Doing great. What did you think about today, gentlemen?
Go ahead.
Yeah, chicken parm. The chicken parm is usually mediocre, but it was far less than mediocre today. That is for sure. So the mediocre chicken parm failed to live up to its expectation. It was quite worse than that today, and quite it's pretty self-incriminating there as to some of the time frames. I think David Yannetti basically hit one of the grand slams of this entire trial so far by simply playing footage from the waterfall featuring Chicken Parm at 12:13, sitting in his stool, when he had previously testified that he had left the got home at 12:05 to the 12:10 range, and now was suddenly saying, well, I don't, I can't remember now. He started to say, he started to walk it back all of a sudden. And that was really notable for me because, David Yannetti's wonderful job today was simply by the way he set up his questions. And he actually took them about, and this is what I talked about yesterday, and I remember Mark agreed as well on this, was that I thought a methodical, long-term cross-examination was the best way to conduct this. And David Yannetti did it beautifully. It was long. It was perfectly, I thought, an elongated cross-examination was exactly what he needed to do. And the thing was, basically, by the time he called checkmate, which he could have gotten at any point that he wanted, he waited like a methodically paced hour just to get there. And he basically got Chicken Parm to confirm that he went home at a certain time, he went to bed at a certain time, but then David Yannetti set the table. What did he do? How long is the distance from the waterfall to your home? How long did you go to bed after you got home? And he got him to establish a timeline. And by taking this timeline, because Chicken Parm never knew it. This is just like the Karen Reed backing into John O'Keefe footage, that came out wrong. Backing into John O'Keefe's vehicle footage and the camera footage there. This is footage that I don't think they ever thought of when they put this all together. They didn't remember that. Well, guess what? We have you on camera at the waterfall at 12:13, and he had testified earlier that he'd gotten home at 12:05 to 12:10. And when you tack those minutes back on, basically what that means is that if he had gotten home by a certain time, his son got home by a certain time, and his son notified he got home at a certain time, then there'd be a certain time that would place him outside of the realm of 34 Fairview Drive. But now that we know that he didn't leave till no sooner than 12:13, you tack the distance from the waterfall to the home where Chris lives, and then you tack on the time he stayed up, which is another 15 minutes, and then you tack on the time before he fell asleep, and then the time after his son got home and let him know he was home, and that all just adds up to what, 12:50 a.m., 1 a.m., somewhere wild like that. It's well out of range. But that was another moment in this trial where, many of us who followed this case, whether it's just a short while or a long while, have a certain set of expectations. And every now and then during the trial, new information comes up that just kind of paints things just a little bit differently than you saw it, but if not more now in your favor of what you thought. In other words, these things that are coming out are only proving what we've believed further. And that's exactly what happened today, was basically that footage at 12:13 showing Chicken Parm Charlie sitting there absolutely was a bombshell. And it's a type of bombshell that there's no recovery from.
Time stamped.
Yep.
Time stamped. I loved it. It was amazing. There was a lot of good stuff I want to see more. I mean, there were some things that were missing that we'll talk about. But one of the things we just got a comment, Mike is almost at 10,000 subs. Hit the subscribe button, y'all. I think we're going to hit 10,000 tonight on the show. 10,000 subs on YouTube, which I never thought we'd get to. Amazing. Thank you, everybody. Let me know when we hit 10,000 officially. We'll ring some kind of bell. But I mean, with what was going on today in court, one of the things that we talked about last night was I think we said the beer cans, which didn't actually come up, but it was the similar type of stuff, the neighborhood stuff, the pictures and photos that we talked about. we didn't even see the one that we saw earlier. These were different photos now. It did come up. It did come up about what was going on. You gave John a nickname. Were you surprised by that today, Mazza Media?
Repeat that again. Sorry, I was
Well,
just sharing the link.
basically,
Sorry.
I was asking, like, one thing that did come up was basically we're talking about the Ring cameras, the photos
Yeah.
of the neighborhood stuff.
Yep.
And it didn't come up the way we thought. Like there were,
No.
like you said, there were different photos.
That's
and
right.
It wasn't about the beer cans this time. It was about the
Right.
kid. And we found out it was Dylan, not the other kid cutting through the yard, they said.
Yeah. So he claimed. Yeah. I don't know if I buy that or if that was kind of a little bit of a misdirection attempt by him. Oh, it was not me. It wasn't him. It was the other kid. But it sounds like to me that that was a swerve, a big time swerve. That's for sure. That's I didn't buy that at all when he said. I mean, it could be possible too that maybe that kid, maybe both his sons were doing that as well. It could be a situation where both of them were just doing it, or one was doing it and he put it on the other. So it could be any variation of that. That's for sure. But there, the picture that came out today of them posing by his fence was very very peculiar and very disturbing. That individuals would go on someone else's property. It might have been when they were house sitting. I don't know. But that's extremely disturbing to go on your neighbor's property like that and just start posing like that and sitting on the fence. And, I don't know if they were intoxicated at the time or what it was, but that's just not behavior becoming of anyone. And if it was going to be anyone that was doing that, I'd expect that more out of middle school and high school kids and maybe college kids, but not out of people that are over the age of,
50.
25, 30.
Yeah. Every bully always says it's just a joke after.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what he said today. It's just a joke. Attorney Bederow, what did you think today?
The first thing I think is we need to schedule a TED Talk with the Norfolk County DA's office because they have a crisis. And, they don't know how to try a case. And it's getting to the point of absurdity where we keep going back to leading with your chin, and he just does it again and again. And so, we spent all day yesterday with several witnesses who were ostensibly going to set the scene at the bar. And really, they provided nothing useful. They were all at the bar. Everyone was happy. Nobody particularly appeared drunk. So what's the purpose of calling these witnesses? They just get turned around and become defense witnesses. And then, but those witnesses, even generally speaking, are relatively harmless. They did damage to the DA's case. But then you come to today, and after what's been going on for the last week, how in the hell does it occur to these people it's a good idea to call Chris Albert? For what purpose? I mean, forget the cross. Let's get to that in a few minutes. What is the goal of the DA to move the ball forward in their case by calling Chris Albert to say, hey, guess what? I was at the bar. Nobody seemed too drunk. I didn't really see anything out of the ordinary. And then, of course, you get to his cross, which we'll do in a minute. Same thing with the wife. That, let's call her to say the same thing. I left, and let's make sure she comes up there chomping away, looking. I mean, you're a prosecution witness in a murder case, and you come up to the witness stand chewing gum like just chomping away. It's distracting. It's unbelievable. But then you do get to the cross, and this is the problem. Like what Mazza just said, they call Chris Albert. It establishes nothing other than your son Colin's alibi is poof, gone, kaput, never to be seen again. All right. And, that's the big takeaway from Chris Albert, other than all of these Alberts. Look how do they grab you? And you wonder how the jury thinks. They look really classless. You want to choose my words carefully, but they, with these stupid posing on the fence, the pictures with the middle fingers that they're doing, the other guys wrestling in the bar, just all of this. They just seem that a jury's going to look at them as the kind of people, maybe they would do this. I don't know. And they're all, running the town and this and that. But then, so you call Julie Albert to say what? I was at the bar and, I went home. And then a funny thing happened, even on her direct. I don't know if you picked up on this, but I look for things like this. The story that they had about, Chris coming home, shivering cold, and going straight to bed and
The
jumping
bathroom.
in.
One
Yeah.
said the bathroom, one said
Yeah.
going, right?
But then, the ritual where, wonderful Colin comes home every night like a diligent good boy and says, good night, mommy and daddy. And they portray this. And then obviously she doesn't know what just happened an hour before. That whole story gets screwed up. Did you notice she estimated the exact same time, by the way, 12:05,
Yes.
12:10?
Mm-hmm.
That's planned.
Organized.
But so how does all of this fall apart? And this is what Mazza said. It falls apart through a video that's already in evidence. And this is why we have to have a TED Talk with Lally and his merry band of fools. Did you not prep these? Of all witnesses, did you not know that there's a video of you leaving? We didn't discuss that. You didn't know that that was going to come out. And you're objecting like mad every time they're trying to probe on cross, and lawyers call those ouch objections. You're objecting because it hurts. You don't really have a reason other than, make this stop. And they look terrible. And then, so the alibi is gone. Just take that for what it's worth. But then you get to the wife. And the question is, initially, is she like another Katie McLaughlin? Did you see in the beginning? How did she describe Proctor? I wrote it down, actually. I know him, but not that well, right? Something like that. And then it turns out, never mind that she's pretty much very close with the sister. Of course, how do you define very, which was very Clintonian in parsing words. But then it turns out, well, wait a minute. I go to Proctor's house all the time. We go swimming in his pool. We do all of these things. And now you go back to, but I don't know him that well. And the worst part, I wouldn't even mention the phone stuff.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. How many times she's talked on the phone with Elizabeth
the
Proctor?
phone,
Apparently.
I mean, the phone is the warm-up act. I mean, yes, clearly, she's caught on the phone. And I would suggest to you, by the way, a side note, the phones could be, I think Yannetti suggested it. I actually suggested this on Twitter before I watched it. This could be like a back channel for Proctor and, the Alberts, who knows? But putting aside the 67 phone calls, which of course she's not telling the truth, the 12-minute call, the timing of the calls, you haven't even gotten to the text messages yet where there's a strong suggestion that, she wants to buy a gift for this person that she barely knows that well. And then, of course, his response, which is in the context of this case, is even worse, because what he doesn't say is, you can't do that or don't say that. He says, give it to my wife. Okay. The man is corrupt. I mean, everyone can see it. Okay. That is what a corrupt police officer would do. Don't give it, buy my wife something nice because, I arrested, I got her. I don't know, but it's just another complete disaster. It's all the DA's fault. There's no reason for him to call these witnesses. I mean, what can anybody out there name one significant fact that the DA advanced their case by calling these Alberts, as opposed to, we destroyed Colin's alibi, which is critical to the defense, and we've established this incestuous relationship between the Alberts, the McCabe's, and Proctor.
And that Karen and John loved each other. They were lovey-dovey. And that these other goons were wrestling. I mean, it's all bad for them. It's so funny. This is their best witnesses.
And the other problem with the Alberts, and I don't know if, they didn't do it with Chris Albert, so maybe they won't do it with Julie Albert. Maybe they'll save this for Proctor and his partner. But there is a written statement out there which, first of all, suggests that they were interviewed together, which is, again,
crazy, not right.
No, it's just bad police work. You don't do that. But the first thing that Proctor's partner wrote is that they told me they went from the waterfall to 34 Fairview. Now, there's only two possibilities at this point. You have sworn testimony from both Alberts who are in lockstep. It didn't happen, right? Yep. And then you're going to have Proctor and his partner that are going to have to say one of two things. Either that's what they told me because I wrote it, or they come up with some fakakta story that, I made a mistake, which isn't helpful either. And then, so the question is, if the Alberts told the police initially that we were there, why are they now switching it to this? And the answer is probably to protect Colin, to set up that alibi. And in the beginning, I would suggest that it could be the reason that they were there is because they had all their horses lined up, all their ducks in a row, that to a man and woman, nothing happened here, nothing happened here. And it sounds like a more impressive story if you have 10 witnesses saying that, as opposed to none, right? I mean, that's going to be the DA's argument. Every witness is going to say nothing happened. But again, and I'll leave Lally alone for at least this portion of the conversation. If these two Alberts weren't at 34 Fairview, what are you doing calling them? What are they going to do for you? And all they did was set him backwards, and they're a joke. I don't know what they're doing. I can't figure out what they're doing.
Under normal circumstances, this cover-up with these particular initial players would have never gone as far as it had if it wasn't for the connections that they had from a lawful standpoint. That they just have all these people who have connections, who have connections, who have connections, all the way right up to the DA's office. And when you look at this cover up, and just as we have, as Mark just explained as well, is it's really a crackpot cover up. It's really a cover up that's blatantly obvious. It's clear as day that it is a cover up. And the only reason why it's been such a dogfight to bring this all to light is because of the connections that these people have, that literally under normal circumstances, if they didn't have these kind of connections, Turtle Boy doesn't go to jail.
Right.
Turtle Boy doesn't get arrested. They don't basically barrage his house. And, like Turtle Boy always says, they had justifiable cause to go into his house and arrest him in October of last year, but they had no justifiable cause to go into 34 Fairview Road when there's a dead police officer. And
Right.
I don't blame Turtle Boy for saying that right up to the heavens, because it's the ultimate point.
Well, one of the problems that the DA is dealing with, besides his own incompetence, is that the people that he's taken to the dance, the Alberts and the rest of them, I'm sorry to say, they ain't that bright. In fact, they're quite dumb, if you couldn't tell from listening to them today. And it's hard to lie, and it's hard to put lies on top of lies, and especially when you have prepared lawyers cross-examining you and doing whatnot. So they're at a huge disadvantage. But this is what they're stuck with. I mean, another thing today that made me almost fall out of my chair when I finally watched this was this maybe ridiculous story of, another ritual in the Albert family is to go to Dunkin' Donuts on, it's today's birthday. So, let's go in the snowstorm to Dunkin' Donuts. And I got a missed call, she said, at 5:55 from Maccab. But this is interesting. Today, she said, I just got a missed call and I did nothing. I went about my day. I got donuts and drove over to 34 Fairview and was going to leave the donuts in the car when they called me in. And then and of course, all the cops are gone because we know they left the crime scene at 8 o'clock. I went in there and they told me this horrible news. That's wonderful, except for the fact that, Proctor and his buddy have a police report which basically says you got to call at 4:55, which, by the way, that's devastating if true.
So many conflicting reports.
But that's too early. I mean,
how many days of conflicting reports have we had? Different reports from what's written in the files to the testimony.
I think what you're going to find out is the cops are going to say that's a typo, because if that call happened at 4:55 with Maccab saying he's dead, that's before Karen Reed called.
Game over.
That's devastating. I mean, so they'll say that's not true. But the other thing in that report is she said that missed call basically led me to learn right then, presumably by calling her back, and, oh my God, this terrible thing happened. And that's the exact opposite of what she said today.
Conflicting in all the reports. It's from the EMTs, from their testimony, the police, and now these folks. It's just that everything is conflicting.
But they don't, I mean, it's like, this is why if something ever happens with the feds, it's going to get real interesting about the DA as a witness, because he's like the nucleus of all the lies, meaning they all told him. He's made so many representations which are either outright false or he was misled or whatever it is. I mean, even today, another thing that was problematic. Didn't he say a month ago when they were going back and forth in the pretrial things that when they were trying to poo-poo the Proctor Albert connection, that all she did, what was it? In a pinch, I think he said that she watched the Proctor sisters' kids in a pinch or something like that.
Yeah.
And then what did she say today after the freak out objection? She like her face like exploded. Oh, I wasn't supposed to say that until you object. But after that came out, what did she say? She said, I watched them 2 days a week. That's not a pinch. That's like regular employment.
Yeah.
So these people are terrible.
It's what I would call regular, almost a daily customer. I mean, if it's more than once a week, my dog walk business, we call them a regular. I mean, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah. And the connection between, Proctor and this family is, I mean, that they've started the process of extracting that, and it's only going to get worse when there's questions about the gifts and all that stuff. So
tomorrow, I that's the other thing too, with Chris, I'm surprised. I know it was when he went hard on you and Eddie got the goods, but I'm surprised there wasn't more on Chris Albert. One of the big things that we thought would be brought up, and I don't know if this is going to be brought up later, if this is because Bev's not allowing it, is the Lank stuff, the Laalo Brothers. That was not brought up at all today.
Yeah, good point.
That wasn't brought up, which, I mean, he's off the stand. Now, again, they want to call, one of these Lapolitos. So, from their perspective, it may be, we have the point, and then when we call a witness, and then we don't have to get into the details. But there's another school of thought. So you have the point, okay? If you ask Chris Albert, what you could do is run the risk of him trying to explain and minimize it. So again, it's kind of like, what's the cost benefit? We have the point. To me, it's the same analysis as why you don't recall Katie. You have it. What's the point? I give her a chance to say I misspoke. She's toast. And I think Lank is going to have potentially that same problem. And I'll also assume that they must have had a ruling against them that did not allow them to get into the fact that he killed someone previously, because I mean, you bring that out if you can. I mean, that's you would bring that out.
And additionally,
that
we know
left the scene. I mean, that's the I think
that
a
shows
lot
a
of people
disrespect for the law and
exactly.
placing your own interests above that.
One thing, you make a mistake, then you leave.
No,
and
no,
then
who was the lawyer?
Even if you leave for like 5 minutes, I'd feel okay if someone came back. But he came back the next day.
Who was his lawyer?
Yeah. Well, I'm sure
Bev's brother.
That.
Bev's brother was his lawyer.
That's crazy.
Yep.
It really is a small incestuous town. It's crazy.
It is.
It's unbelievable, the connections that everyone has.
Yeah.
So where do you think this goes tomorrow with her? I think you've already mentioned a couple things. Where do we think this is going to go tomorrow with the witness back on the cross?
Well, I would spend as long as I could, 5 or 10 minutes, kind of rehashing what's been hashed in terms of, you remember we talked yesterday about your phone calls, and if you had a chance to remember, and just, she's not going to say anything different. He's just reminding the jury she's full of shit and basically a proctor. So you'll see, I think, some more of that relationship. I think obviously he'll try to get out the text message stuff. And then I would confront her about whether she told Proctor and his partner that you went to 34 Fairview. She's going to say no. And he's going to say, are you sure? And he's going to say, when you spoke to them, were they taking notes and da-da-da-da-da? And let her say absolutely, positively not, so that the jury knows something's coming, because what it will then turn into is asking the state police guys, who have two unpleasant choices. As we said, they can contradict her and say, that's what she told me, or they can look like absolute morons and say, I can't fill out a basic report of what somebody told me. And either way, that's good for the defense.
What do you think, Mazzamito?
Well, the defense is rolling right now, absolutely rolling right through these folks. And I'd say right now, Mrs. Albert is probably, this is probably the worst thing that could have happened to her in terms of, even despite David Unetti pressing her as he had today. And he was really, really steamrolling, especially the last 5 minutes of that. He was really steamrolling with questions. And basically, it almost felt like Auntie Bev threw in the towel, but it's been stated that perhaps that was a planned time to end it anyways. But I can't imagine being in her seat right now, having to come back on that stand first thing in the morning and have to answer a whole new line of questioning, because I think that, like I said, the big thing here is that David Unetti has had a very wonderful game plan, and his way of ordering questions against Chris was masterfully done. And going up against Julie Albert today, I think that there's probably some bombshells that might be in there that we haven't heard about yet, that might indicate some information that contradicts their testimony. One of the most notable moments today was a clip that was surfaced of, I believe it was David Unetti standing with Alan Jackson. You could hear him in the distance when the camera was on Julie, and you could hear, "I know she's lying," basically, was what he said. So
Yeah.
they know what they're up against, and they know what these people are basically really they have a well orchestrated story that has a lot of holes in it, and you just need to know how to basically pick through the holes. And that's basically what David did with the waterfall footage against Chris today. But yeah, he had her. I mean, she looked nervous. I thought Chris looked more confused at times, but I think she looked way more nervous up there and definitely was on edge. But I feel like the real thing that's killed me today personally is just all the objections that were sustained. I felt Auntie Bev probably sustained about 80 to 90% of those. She did let a few go through, which I was happy about. There were a few moments where she did let it go through with the questions, but
Let's
Problem.
stop. Yeah. I
Yeah.
want to hear about that because
Yeah.
Okay.
Chris Albert, it was over and over and over again. And I also want to mention, looks like we got breaking news on who's going to be on the stand tomorrow. Brian and his wife, Brian Albert.
Okay. That sounds like, yeah, that's what I'm expecting. I figure it's probably going to go, is that's kind of been the trend. It's been like, husband and wife have been going here, since yesterday and into today. So that makes sense. That's going to be some must watch courtroom drama
Again
tomorrow.
tomorrow.
Yeah.
The Alberts are all going to be on the stand tomorrow. So the objections, what do you think about that, Attorney Bederow? The objections, especially with Chris Albert, it got annoying after a while.
I mean, look, the bottom line is she's restricting way too much legitimate, good faith probing of this incestuous relationship between these people. At this point, there is more than enough evidence to allow this to continue. And again, they can deny it, they can do whatever, but there's just too much smoke going on not to allow them to probe this. But I think the most annoying thing about it is there's no method to her madness. I mean, in terms of like a legal basis, she just seems to be very arbitrary, or, have a limited attention span. So she lets it go or doesn't. She's not consistent in her reasoning. I mean,
That's what I felt like. It's like, why did she let that one go and not that one? It
well,
just
there
didn't.
are times, lawyers, I get it. They're asking what another person's state of mind is or what that person said, that they can't answer that. That's a proper objection. But, why can't they see a picture of these people together, whether it was at a wedding or whatever? No, that's totally appropriate. At this point, they have every right to drive a truck through this relationship and whatnot. And, certainly with the big one, if the big one's testifying tomorrow, this again is just terrible the way the DA is doing this. But by calling Julie, Julie is the one you can really open the door to the relationship, because she's basically best friends with the Proctor family. And again, there's going to be evidence before Brian testifies that there was discussion about gifts and this and that. And so how can you keep shutting this down? So to me, the frustration is she's not legally consistent. She just seems to be really arbitrary in it. And that's annoying.
Yeah, 100% annoying, especially with those wedding photos and
no reason that shouldn't come in.
Yeah, it make no reason.
Yeah, and Michael Proctor's mom saying the Alberts are like family, and David Unetti really probed that today in court, which I like. But the answers he got from Chicken Parm weren't as sufficient as I had hoped, but he got it out there anyways, and the jury heard it. So
yeah.
Yeah, it seems. I imagine the jury's picking up on a lot of this, even when it gets, objected.
Well, I mean, I think they're picking up on everything, but I'm sorry to beat a dead horse, but you go back to what is the DA doing? They keep calling these witnesses, but there's no witness to establish that Karen Reed ran over.
Exactly.
I mean,
Where's the evidence so far?
you
Where's the
are
beef?
2 weeks into this, and they still have nothing that even argue. I'm not even saying is credible, but that
Right.
even
Not
if
even makes a point of it.
would attach. The only evidence they have right now that would even arguably attach this are these statements of "I hit him."
I did it. Yeah, I did
but
it. Yeah,
you
that's
know
it.
what? I hit him doesn't even necessarily mean a car, right?
Right.
I mean, that could be a punch. It could be any number of things, and they haven't done
Nothing.
anything. It's like they're burying the lead. That's something we talked about in their opening statement, and they're doing the same thing. It's unbelievable.
It's like a fifth grade student who sends you 10,000 words that just goes on and on and on and on. It never gets to a point. Now has no structure to it. There's no lead. There's no conclusion.
There's
Nothing.
I mean, in the bar, and what was everyone doing? And what? By the way, did you see? Julie is one thing that she remembers more than anything. She is an expert on the drink of choice in every member of the Albert family, no matter which of the 3 generations we're talking about. That she remembered, boom, to a T. But
tells you a lot. Tells you a lot about that family.
That might have been harmful to them, not so much. Very
I mean,
interesting.
yeah, I don't know how any of them come off as likable either. Like, they're having after parties. I think the average person on that jury is like, wait a minute, they're 50-something years old. And they just did last call and they're having people back at their house. What are you doing? Like,
just the whole manner of presentation. I mean, I think maybe this is not the biggest deal to people, but the idea that you're putting in front of a jury, and I'm going to assume is probably a pretty well educated, and maybe I'm making assumptions I can't make, but to see her come up, given what this case is and given her relationship with everything, and she comes up there just chomping gum.
That too, right?
It's so inappropriate just for what this proceeding is. And it also tells you once again that they don't prep their witnesses. They don't talk to them. They don't have any clue. Chris Albert had no clue. There was a video of him timestamped walking out of the bar. I mean, look, I see if someone comes in a courtroom with gum, I've seen judges say, "Get rid of it
out." Yeah.
Now, not on the witness stand. That's a new one that I've never seen. Okay, but I've seen people, for a court appearance, mostly a defendant or someone else, where a judge would say, "You don't come into my courtroom chomping away like this.
Right.
Do that later." And I just can't. It's gross. I mean, it's a lack of respect for the proceeding, but maybe even more importantly, it's a lack of seriousness. And these are the witnesses that are supposed to be, in some sense, gut wrenching for what they encountered and this unfortunate incident that occurred on their family house. And you just come in there like that, as if it's nothing. And I think jurors think of that stuff. I really do.
They walk in the door, some of these people, and it's like they're turning in incomplete papers for their final exams, a 10-page paper, and they're turning in a 2-page paper. It's just, there's no substance to a lot of these witnesses. Not there's a lot of good ones yesterday, obviously, but some of these other ones, it's just and Sue O'Connell from NBC 10, who has been actually pretty much hated by a lot of us in this movement because of her just lack of seeing it. But now that she's seeing court day in and day out in the trial sense of things, she's on the news last night saying, I just don't know what this prosecutor is trying to tell me or tell anyone or tell this jury. They're making no case.
Yeah, she talked about all the stuff we talked about, like
saying the probably more polite way.
The snow. No, but she said the same stuff. The snow. Remember how much snow there was that they shoveled out the. Yeah, that's it.
I mean, you've got to keep a jury awake and tell them something that matters. And, just calling an army of witnesses to say nothing makes no sense. And, the other thing is, where is the drunkenness? There is paperwork that was filled out by Proctor somewhere in this case, some motion way back when, in which he stated that I have a video, okay, from the bar. I watched it with very specific timestamps, which would show Karen Reed going to the bar or drinking again and again and again. I'm not going to assume that that's not true. If it is true, it makes you just question Lally even more. Say, I have an idea. Why don't you put in the video and show this and do this? But of course, he's probably going to need Proctor to do that. If he's the one, who watched it and is going to walk through it. Or, I mean, I guess he could have done it with the Waterfall employee too, to tell you the truth. You call someone from the Waterfall. But instead of just playing the video and showing her doing it, he calls 6 witnesses to say, she looked fine to me. And, we're just going to get cross-examined and help the defense.
You think that would be like the first or second witness to like establish this woman was drunk, like right from the beginning?
That's right.
I think if he had, again, a plan or any original thought, what he would have done, I understand that the first responders, but, that should have been a day, maybe. You don't need 6 of them, but you establish the scene, you lay it down. We heard she said something, and then they say, and then we called, the state police. Okay, you pass the baton to those guys. Tell us how you built the case. And when they mention these witnesses, weave in those witnesses. Now you're telling the story. I mean, how do you not, after the first responder people establish for the jury that the first responders and police on the scene that night suspected her because she said some really weird things, and then we went and saw the car, and oh my God, it was missing a taillight. How do you not do that from the jump and put right in the jury's face, there's some there? We don't have that.
No, we have a lot of nothingness.
Yep.
All their witnesses, like, I go back to that couple that we liked, the couple that didn't go to the after party. And one of them was definitely drinking water. They didn't say she was drunk. They have nothing there. I don't think she was drunk.
They didn't say she was drunk. And then if it wasn't bad enough, just to rub, Lally's face in it, the guy says, yeah, my wife was mad because when they were all lovey-dovey, she says, listen, when a witness can tell a vignette like that, that's powerful because that's clearly not fabricated. It's like funny,
it's real.
That jumps out from the evening. And he specifically recalled that they were so, affectionate that it got me in trouble at home, like tongue in cheek, not really in trouble, but enough where she said, you don't ever do that with me. I mean, it's frustrating from a lawyer's perspective. It's painful to watch this. It really is.
You'd have a field day against these people if you were defending Karen, Mark. You'd walk all over them yourself. No problem.
He's already ready.
Oh my God! Listen, any lawyer would love to call these lawyers and say, "Tag me in for one of these cross examinations." It's like lawyer dream cross. These ones coming up for sure.
And would you say even when you were just starting to learn about this, just based off your experiences of the law and all that alone, even if you didn't know anything about this, that you probably would have been able to debunk and take down a lot of the things that they're doing, because just based on the way the law works and all that, it can easily be picked apart even before you get into the actual substance of knowledge, true knowledge of what actually happened, just from a legal standpoint. Do you feel like just from that standpoint that you could just basically pick a lot of things apart right off the bat?
Yeah, it's like, I know we talked about this before, but they never should have indicted her. I mean, that's the real sin in this whole case, is starting the ball rolling with an indictment into trial. And I mean, they had every right, I suppose, to suspect her. I don't think it's irrational if, they claim, they didn't claim. I mean, if McCabe told them, she said, Karen told me I might have hit him, and they say, all right, that's interesting. And then they go look at her car, and it does have, there is some damage to the car on the light. I don't think it's irrational for any police officer or prosecutor to say that's somebody we should look into. I think that's totally normal. But then one of the things that would be one of the biggest red flags in the case investigatively would be who's acting like somebody who is innocent of a crime and
Mhm.
who's acting like a freaking criminal, who's
Mhm.
hiding something.
Exactly.
So
Mhm.
when they go to Karen Reed, what does she do? There's my car. She didn't hide it. It was in her parents' house, right? Just sitting
Mhm.
there. It was sitting at, sitting wherever it was. When they asked to see her phone, here's your phone. When they wanted to talk to her, she's acting like someone who doesn't make you innocent, but is not acting with something to hide, as opposed to the other crowd. What are they doing? They're deleting messages. They're deleting calls. They're lying about who was here and when. They're acting like weirdos. They're selling things. They're just acting in all kinds of ways that are suspicious. And, that should have drawn more attention, especially with the relationships, especially with the lack of, real evidence other than her own alleged statement coming from Maccab that, I might have hit him. I don't know how you indict on that
Yeah. It
unless
doesn't
you fix evidence.
rise to it. Yeah.
Yeah,
They didn't
exactly.
investigate it enough. None of it. They didn't investigate the house. They didn't investigate even Karen Reed
No,
enough, in my opinion.
they grabbed her up in 2 days, right? Or 3
Exactly.
days, February 1st or 2nd, whatever it was.
And I mean, the suspiciousness of this woman, we have a comment here. Jen McCabe is the ringleader. Today, she came up in a strange way about the surprise. Remember that? Whose
The-
testimony was that? Was that Julie or even
That was
Chris?
that
It was yesterday.
that was the very and this is a problem for them too. That was the very credible pharmacist
That's right.
who
Oh, Karina.
whatever,
Yeah.
Yep.
who basically said that she said, Karen, you're coming with us.
And she tried to separate her, it seemed like, too, which is weird. That's what it
That's
sounded like.
yeah. Not for nothing. That's not what she said on TV. And, I don't know how that's going to factor in here or not. But during her TV interview, there was something along the lines of, nobody asked us to come or nobody asked me or him. And, the only criticism I could really levy at these guys so far is I don't know why you put her on TV, because it just creates problems that need
Mhm.
not exist. And
Yeah.
I don't think it's a big deal, but you don't need it either.
Yeah, she said, quote, "I'm not even sure we've even been invited." I think she said something just along the lines of that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a
100%.
hedge and it's not an affirmative thing, but it's not entirely what this woman was saying. But just an observation.
Yeah.
What did you notice about the surprise comment from about Jennifer McCabe? Anything, Mazza?
Yeah, I was taken by surprise by that. I didn't, because I'm not one that thinks that this is premeditated. I'm very much
I
of
know,
the
right?
I see this
I
very much
don't,
so
but
as a
yeah,
this is kind of like the beginning of the movie Copland, where there's a Superboy gets in a shootout that happens at random, and it's a cover up on the spot. That they basically perpetrate in the beginning of that movie. I see it like that. I just don't see, like, I know it's easy to think like, oh, it's got to be premeditated. They planned this. They wanted to take him down. But the thing is that you don't really see any kind of quarrelsomeness at all. You see Matt and Jen and Karen and John in a 4-person gathering near the bar area. They all seem pretty friendly. Brian and Brian seem to be kind of amongst themselves, just doing their own thing. So I mean, of course, I don't know everything about that, the inner workings of everything, of course, nor do any of us, but it just doesn't, I just never really got the drift that it was a premeditated attack. Because if it was, this has always been my reasoning for thinking this, is that if you're going to premeditatedly attack and kill somebody, why do it on your own property? Why dump a body on your own lawn? Why not, I don't know, leave him for dead somewhere, or, throw him off a
well,
cliff
what
somewhere? You know
I
what I
was
mean?
thinking, there could be another thing.
Yeah.
Because Sean on the Golf talked about this, that Brian Higgins likes to get in fights. He likes to
Mhm.
throw the first punch at people. He likes to. It even said it was posted. I love this, that it was posted as a yearbook that he disciplined someone at a high school. The quotes that they have. So what if
Yeah.
they were disciplining John O'Keefe, and just like pledge frats, they don't mean to kill their pledges. But when you haze somebody, when you discipline somebody, sometimes it can go south and that person ends up. So what if it was that? What if Jen McCabe and then we're going to lure John over to teach him a little lesson, maybe rough him up a little bit.
Could be. I mean, I think what Maz has said is pretty compelling, and I agree with it, that you don't premeditatingly bring someone to your house and then throw them on the front lawn and say, what we'll do is we'll have the girlfriend, run them over and put it on her. That just makes no sense. I think the problem is for them, whatever happened. But even though they're not the brightest people in the world, they have some degree of intelligence to understand that there was an invitation extended on some level to these people to come to the house. And we know that she was going to drop him off at the house, and that in other words, everyone's going to know that he was here. So if he just disappears after being in our house, that's not going to make any sense. So I think something happens and you throw it outside, and whether they hope you get plowed up or whatever, or hypothermia, you have a story: hit by a car out in the street, died of exposure, slipped and fell. It's slippery out there. He's only got one shoe on, that kind of thing. I don't know, but I don't think this could have been premeditated. That just, to me, makes no sense.
What
But
about
again,
what about the hazing angle, though? The
Yeah,
disciplining part, maybe.
Well, what about?
Definitely in play.
I think. Well, what about this? Evidence that they have presumably. Well, let's back up. Everyone tells us that Higgins told the feds a bunch of stuff, and I've never seen this, but I'll assume it's accurate for purposes of this. And one of the things that he allegedly said was that she was, giving me the look and was angry at O'Keefe and, was trying to hit on me, and we were flirty. And I guess they have these messages, and all of a sudden there's, what are you doing? What if O'Keefe saw her phone and says to Higgins, what are you doing, man? That's my, and the next thing tough guy Higgins hits first and hits hardest, and knocks him out, and he hits his head on the thing. Oh my God, the guy's like not breathing. Holy shit. What do we do? What do we do? And the next thing look, at the end of the day, these people are connected, and I don't think you can get away with it to the extent, if they really did this, that they could, unless this was like Copland and that they just had the ability to do that, if that's what happened.
And they could have roughed them up even more after, things happened too, or maybe they had him beaten to a pulp and just said, well, let's give him a few more licks just to kind of try to put him, closer to death, and
Right.
then probably drag them outside after that. So that footprint still gets to me, because I'm thinking about the snow is that if you step on snow at a lower level layer, right? So say like there's an inch or two of snow on the ground, and you step on that snow, what eventually happens is more snow accumulates over that, is that fills the footprint and then covers the footprint. So when that snow starts to melt, that overlayer over the original footprint, or the original 2 inches of snow, when that melts down, that reveals a footprint afterwards. So what I'm trying to get at is that footprint really from when they were dumping him in the yard that morning, and it was really a footprint that was established during the dragging out. And then when they went back, however longer later, where Berkowitz randomly found that taillight, was that footprint really someone's footprint from that night when they dragged him out, now revealed by the snow, and it finally melted down to that level. These are just wandering thoughts I got.
But doesn't it look like that the giant shard of glass that he claims he saw out of nowhere is kind of on top of the footprint?
That's right.
Again, I'm not an expert on footprint analysis and what it all means, but
right.
I don't think you have to have a hell of a lot of education to conclude that if the glass is covering part of the footprint, but not all of it, that the glass is on top of the footprint, meaning the footprint must have been there first.
Right. Exactly. 100%. Yeah. I don't think if someone had stepped, the footprint of it in itself is a complete footprint, which means that it is not interrupted by anything that was between the snow and the foot, which would mean the glass, which would have shattered in order to form a fully formed footprint. So we know that footprint is legitimately formed with the full pattern of the bottom of the boot or shoe or whatever it was. So we know that. So it's definitely, yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, one of the other things that despite all the testimony about snow, Albert and some others said some things today that are not so great for them if you explore the defense theory, because they said when I went home, it had started to snow, but it wasn't really that bad. So the point is, an hour later, I don't think it was that bad either. And if the story is, all of these people are leaving the house and he's lying there in the yard. Now, unless they're going in the other direction, where are their cars parked? I don't know. It's not like he's covered under a foot of snow at 12:30 or whatever time it is. It's got to be fresh. And also, again, I'm not a medical expert, but if he was very recently dead or dying and had very recently been in normal climate conditions, meaning inside, as opposed to lying in the cold for 8 hours, his body temperature, when this first happened, would be like you standing outside in the cold. You're not going to freeze to death in 10, 20, 30 minutes. And presumably, there's less coverage, like you're going to be more obvious because you still have heat, I think. And all these people who left the house, nobody saw anything. And,
Right.
that's hard to believe.
Yes, exactly.
It just
Exactly.
doesn't make any sense to me.
I analyzed the images of where the light poles were, the telephone light poles were stationed across the street, and it would be slightly darker because the lights aren't too close. But the thing is that there would be enough light to reveal a shadow, sizable enough to see a body on the side of the road where no vehicles parked in front of it. So it's just, again, to that point, however dark or lit up that road was, it's still unfathomable that anybody would not have seen a body there. And at that, at least one person out of all those people that had departed that party would have at least seen something. And they all walked out of there knowing that body was there.
And none of the neighbors across the street had a functioning ring to show people whether it be a car accident or just see people walking around.
Right.
There's no footage from that street, from
Nothing.
any of the 4 or 5 houses. That's
Did they even ask?
Yeah,
I mean, we know
exactly.
they asked Kelleher. He didn't have it, but I wonder if anyone else was asked.
They didn't ask, then they should all be fired. I mean, that that could potentially show, good or bad, what happened.
Yeah. It's just, I've said this. I know Nick Rocco's said it on Court TV himself. And I've said this many times in debates with trolls. I've said, look, all the neighbors have to do is reveal that ring camera footage of her backing into him and killing him, and that stops this argument right there. Our whole argument's gone immediately.
Or alternatively, again, to expose, a corruption racket, which is, it could show somebody dumping a body, or even if you can't see everything, it could show people walking right by it, meandering about, coming and going. I mean, whatever. I mean, look, if everybody presumably who is honest in this whole process wants to know what happened, truthfully, whatever it is. Right. I mean, if somebody told you, my God, there's video of her doing it, then you'd say, well, then she did it. If that's what it was, there's no reason to believe that, obviously. But I mean, I don't know how. I mean, somebody's saying right now they weren't asked. If that's true, that's up there with the biggest part of the scandal of the whole case. I mean, we understand you use solo cups and Stop and Shop bags and leaf blowers and all that, but you don't knock on houses and collect or attempt to collect. I mean, everyone has these ring cameras now. Everyone. Yeah. Or close to it.
Right.
I'm going to question, where's the black hat? Where's the belt? Vomit on his underwear? Did they wash his clothing? Check their water meters usage and time.
You know what? The belt to me is the big one, because I mean, and which, by the way, you can see in the bar in the pictures when she's kind of like, being affectionate with him, let's just say, where she has her hand kind of like on his back towards his butt. You can see his belt. And again, not being an accident reconstruction expert or anything like that, but I'm not sure that if you accept the fact that she plowed into him at 20 miles an hour, they say
22 to 24.
20. All right.
Driving backwards.
Right. Let's give it to them. 24. Give them the high end and give them the 62 feet, and let's give them the direct, all that. I'm not sure that is going to knock your tied belt off your pants. I mean, you've certainly seen car accidents where shoes sometimes, do come off but that's when they go flying or whatever. Not to be too graphic about this, but the idea that his belt would come off at that low a speed type of collision doesn't make any sense. And so where is it? I mean, is it in the pool? I don't know. Did it go in the garbage? But, I think at some point the defense should, do something with that. If there's still no belt. I mean, is that the understanding? There's never going to be a belt, or is the belt coming?
No idea.
I'm just
We'll
thinking
see.
of always missing articles of clothing where they bit by the dog, and they had
Yeah.
such, the shoe, you got a shoe, you got a belt, you got a hat. Were these just
A
articles
shoe.
of
That was a shoe.
clothing
Yeah.
that were?
I guess they found the shoe later, didn't they?
I think they
Yeah.
found the shoe and the hat under snow, but
Yeah.
which is interesting because a dog could get a shoe. I mean, that's like one of the first things that
They always go for hats and shoes. I got a
Yeah.
dog. Every time I come to the house, they always have a shoe, a hat, a slipper, or a sock. Always. Yeah, there's so much to this that we could be discussing about the testimony. Go ahead, Mazza.
Yeah, Mike, I liked your point the other day that you made on one of the shows earlier this week, where you talked about the defense's strategy and how that there's just so many angles so many things you can talk about, so many angles to this thing that it's almost overwhelming from a defense standpoint if you're a defense attorney to just kind of find like an angle, because it's not only just that, like you said, but also because we're also thinking about from a defense attorney's perspective. I'm sure Mark can elaborate on this after I defer, that you have to present it in a manner that's not overwhelming to the jury. So I'll defer to Mark just for some thought on that.
Yeah, no, I think they did it in their opening statement and said that it's a frame up and there's all kinds of issues, and it all relates to this relationship and the connection to the state trooper and others. And they're just methodically going through it. But the key is they had a theme, and that's how you keep the jury, I think, generally involved in following you. You give an effective opening, which is not evidence, so it's not to be considered by them, but it's in essence a demonstrative aid to help them think this through clearly. And you saw this from the jump. The DA gets up and mumbles through, a half hour, 45 minutes of saying, you're going to hear from this person and this person. Nobody cares about names of 6 people at the bar who are going to say that they were being affectionate and in love, and then they left. I mean, seriously, as opposed to the defense who says, this is a frame job, right? This is what's going on. They don't need to use 27 names, but they keep reminding the jury through every witness that there is a corrupt relationship here between an obviously corrupt state trooper who has on top of that, I mean, you can be corrupt without having personal relationships. The problem with this guy is it's his personal relationship, which probably makes him corrupt. I mean, for all you know, he may not have even been a bad guy before this. He just made a really dumb choice in life because he had to help his friends. I don't know. Frankly, it doesn't matter. He is what he is. I mean, he's, just a disgusting police officer. I mean, he's an embarrassment to his profession, but I think the defense has handled this very well, because remember, they can only get out what they're doing on cross and defense. They don't get to do it their way yet because Lally is the quarterback. But the problem is, he's not Tom Brady. He's Mac Jones, right? I mean, we're at a low level here, but he's calling these witnesses, and the defense can only elicit whatever they can elicit, but they're getting all of it and they're doing it. And they have literally flipped every single witness to probably be a net gain or at worst a push. I mean, there's been nothing that came out that would be overly harmful to the defense. I mean, the worst one should have been Katie. I mean, Katie should have been the witness who passed the baton to the next wave of the DA's case. I hit him. Okay, then we have something. And they just don't do it. So, yeah, but when the defense does get their turn, I mean, there are things that they're going to introduce that the jury isn't thinking about. They might, I don't even remember if this was in the opening or not, but if this isn't bad enough, when the defense gets their turn, what happens when they call these accident reconstruction people?
Yeah.
By the way, part of the examination of experts like this, they will go through not only their credentials, but how often they testify, in what courts, have you been deemed an expert in basically every court in America? But part of this is going to be, how many times have you testified for the prosecution? Or, some prosecutor's office, whether it be state or federal, and they're going to say all the time, which is what they do. That's what they did in this case originally, right? And so when the defense has a chance to add that to the corruption angle, I mean, honestly, just you go home that day. It's over. How do you get past that on reasonable doubt?
Yeah. I don't think you do.
Experts who say it couldn't have happened that way. It could not have happened that way.
I don't think they get by it right now. Never mind when the 3 experts get there. And
no, I agree.
Tomorrow's going to be insane. I just can't imagine Brian Albert on the stand tomorrow, what that's going to be like. We haven't heard from him. Chris Albert's the one we've seen, publicly. Brian Albert's been like hiding. It's going to be interesting, Mazza. What do you think?
Go ahead. No,
it was interesting seeing him walk into court today. That was very intriguing. I guess he was on basically essentially on deck.
Standby.
Yeah, to be called. His presence is going to be a big one, because he's one of the, if Jen is Darth Vader, then he's Emperor Palpatine. That's.
I think it's interesting that they're calling Albert next and not McCabe, and that makes me at least 2% wonder, because and allowing for the fact that there's no method to the madness in the way that Lally does this. But if you were to do this analytically and at least want the jury to understand what's happening, then McCabe is 1,000 times more important than Albert. I mean, she is the one. I got the phone call, right? I got the panic phone call.
Central piece.
We drove around. She told me these things. And again, anything Karen Reed said to another witness is admissible as an admission. It doesn't matter. It's not hearsay, even if they're lying about it, which they probably are. It's still going to come in. So if McCabe gets up there and says, Karen Reed told me this, oh my God, that's all coming in. So I wonder why logically would you call the homeowner as opposed to the person who put this all together, when the crazy, and again, I mean, I'm going to take out the hammer meme and bang my head as I say this. At this point, if you're the DA for their case, okay, why are you calling Brian Albert other than to say, we went to my house, he never came in, nothing happened, right? I mean, what else are they going to ask this guy? Because you're just asking to get clobbered. But why they would do this before they lay the foundation of McCabe that night, leading to all of this, the invitation, inviting her over, what happened in the house. For example, if you have McCabe testify, she's in the house, a couple other people, you could say, do you even need to call Brian Albert? At this point, I'd be scared if I were them to call any of these people. But I
don't get why they would do it. It makes no
the wrong
sense.
order. This is what has me the gerbil running around on the thing in my head, thinking that something is potentially. I don't like to get crazy speculation, but even with somebody who has a terrible order of the way they do things, it's a no-brainer that McCabe comes before Brian Albert.
Yeah, I think, I know, really. And we're looking at what Julie Albert finishing up tomorrow, and then potentially Brian and his wife up next. So yeah, that's kind of not the order you want. Yeah, it's it's Lally calling them, right? So it's going to be tough to. But I can see what you're saying, because Jen has so many central ties. She's kind of the central piece where all the string kind of flows off and attaches to everything else that's involved in this thing. So
yeah, but I mean, it's for the jury. I mean, they're not explaining a coherent version of events. They're like throwing mud or paint at the wall, and it's just going in every direction. And look, if they're going to call McCabe and just go with it, then they ought to call her to put everyone in the proper place of what happened, how they're all connected, where they went, how they ended up here, and nothing happened. And then, I was texting him and he wasn't answering, because now what would you be doing? Now you're establishing the time that this probably, under the DA's theory, that this happened. And I texted John, right? I texted him and said, where are you? And I saw her car out there. You know what they're doing at that point? They're actually attempting to fix a theory of when this happened and how it might have happened and at what time. Albert can't do any of that. What's he going to do? He's going to say, we were in my house. He never showed up and I went to bed.
And they're going to keep asking him questions about that, the defense. So, I mean, who knows where that could go? How many questions are going to ask him on that?
Oh, I would keep him up there. I mean, look, he's going to deny things. That's fine. But a lot of the examination of him is just going to be very interesting about his behavior after the fact. And again, what do we have with him? They sold the family house that they had for forever. They did something with the pool. That's weird. They got rid of the dog. That's weird. He retired from his job. That's weird. When he sold his house, he left town, right? I mean, he's like the king of Canton in his own mind. And now he decides now's the time I'm going to just leave town. This for somebody who did nothing wrong, ostensibly. Explain that, right?
Tough.
I mean, I read somewhere it was probably one of these Turtle Boy things way back when, just before I even really knew what this was. But wasn't there something that Albert and the basement, the big one. I mean, the redone basement, which is the biggest of them all, and then sell the house. But my understanding was he had just spent a lot of money working in the basement a couple of years prior. And, how do they
up and do that? And then, sell
you
the home afterwards too.
You rip up the basement. And by the way, why would you fill in a pool if you're moving?
I just want to make a point. That was actually his brother's pool. That was not Brian's. That was his brother's pool.
Okay, fair enough.
It's people got that confused. And the basement floor, I still don't know if that's true. Like I still get worried about that stuff. Like if it's really, I don't know. I know Turtle Boy reported something about it, but I've seen some pushback on it.
Okay. Well, I mean, they'll ask them and, they'll see where it goes. I'm assuming the defense, had an investigator look into this, and probably if there were any contractor records or whatever, you can be sure those subpoenas were flying, months and months ago. So if they have it, if it exists, they'll have it.
The audience is telling me that I was right about the brothers pool, but I'm wrong on the floor. So
the basement floor is true.
I always end up trusting the audience, but who knows? This is all, This is why sometimes I don't like to get so deep into it, because details can, we're finding out in court a lot of the details. That's what I like. Well, what else? There's a lot more I want to talk about tonight.
Well, they're both selling their homes. That was bizarre.
Yeah, that's huge.
I told my brother
They got rid of the dog. I mean,
Yeah.
And then denying the dog had a bite history.
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
Yeah, 100%. It's the dog. I mean, you look at that arm. It's like, come on, that's the dog's involved there somewhere. It's not.
There's such a good defense argument to be made about, again, you draw a line in the sand, January 29th, 2022. And on one side, how did Karen Reed act? Okay, fine. They arrested her, but she was open, sharing, cooperating, whatever you want to call it. And then say, how did the other people that the defense is looking at act? Well, they deleted messages. They switched phones, like literally phones.
Exactly.
They sold
destroyed
houses,
phones.
they got rid of a dog. They left town. And these are people who did nothing but have a party where John O'Keefe never showed up. I mean, if you can't, some of these people online, like some of the wackos, if you can't at least be honest enough to the process and say that is really weird behavior, that at least ought to make you want to think more and hear what they have to say when the defense asks them about that. I mean, if you can't see that, then you're blind, because that's really weird behavior. And there's no reason for these people to be acting weird. That's the key. If they're innocent and did nothing, there's no reason for them to be acting this way.
Exactly.
You
You
know
got
what?
Karen Reed. Oh, Mike, I'm gonna take off right now too.
Yes,
I
you
just
do.
want to get my, yeah, thanks.
Take
Karen
care.
Reed and her defense team are so friendly outside on the way in, on the way out. They're mingling with people, all smiles. That's not the becoming of people that are guilty of anything, or Karen being guilty of anything, or a defense team that's worried. They know that the truth is on their side, and that they're gonna they got nothing to hide. They're confident, and people that seem like they're nervous and got something to hide seem to be a few of the folks that might have been on the stand already from either a first responding stand. I'm not saying all of them, just a few particular ones, and also some other people that were there. So, Mike, yeah, I got to roll. 7:10 was my cutoff time tonight. But Mike, thank you so much. You're the man. Mark, you're the man as well. You guys are awesome, and have a great night.
Thank you,
too.
Beza Media, for being here.
You're welcome. All right, take care, guys. Bye.
Sure.
Now, one of the things I think is weird is about the taillight. The right taillight is supposedly cracked where they say she hit him, but he fell into the yard on the left side. She's backing up. Like, wouldn't she, if she hit him with the right taillight, wouldn't he fall into the street instead of like 10 feet into the yard?
Yeah, unless it was at like a weird angle, right?
Right.
Because road to do that. Also, this is just another problem for the DA. Even if you wanted to go at angles or whatnot, there's snow all over the road,
Right.
Which makes it much trickier. And presumably, if you were doing that at an angle at some point, and if you're going at a high rate of speed in reverse, you might hit the curb and do some undercarriage damage.
Exactly. You think you'd do some damage to the yard or the lawn. It's funny because that guy Kevin that's on Court TV right now playing the other side, he has the video that they show, the reenactment, and you know how he solves that issue that I talked about?
The wrong side video.
Yeah, he shows the left. He shows him getting hit on the left side instead of the right. I mean, it just shows you how weak this whole thing is. Like, there's so much, and it shows him just like backing up straight, like you said. It's no snow. There's no. He just backs up like it's just like a car backing up, just normal. They can't even show it. Doesn't make any sense.
The other thing that I find interesting, people keep saying that although you look at the pictures of the house, it's actually kind of a small front yard, that it can be a little deceiving.
Yes.
So if they're in the house and she just barrels into him and there's like some degree of serious impact, nobody heard that. Or across the street, nobody heard that. I mean, she's going to do that in front of a whole house full. I mean, it's only 12:30.
And it's quiet. I mean, that's the time of night that is quiet, and people are still, like, I know, especially in New England towns, the small New England towns, people are up, but they're watching TV. They're not on the street.
Going to Saturday, so they're not going. They are up. They're
up watching Saturday Night Live or whatever, if it's a Saturday night, but Friday night, exactly. They're awake. They're in their bedrooms. They're watching TV. Not a lot of people in the street, so there's not a lot of noise. So when you hear something, usually I hear coyotes over here. That's what at midnight I hear. Woo, 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 woo. I'm like, what the hell's going on? Yeah, it's usually because a siren goes by. If one ambulance goes by, the coyotes all go crazy. That's when I hear about midnight. Like, we notice that stuff because it's quiet then. I don't notice that during the day because it's all those other noises, landscapers. But during a snowstorm, I think somebody would have heard it. It's crazy. No one heard that.
It is. And look, the problem they have is they have nothing to corroborate anything. They don't have the science, right? They don't have, I mean, they claim they have the taillight shard and the glass. But, you know, the problem is, look who recovered it. It's Berkowitz and Proctor. I mean, you know, that's not, and again, the defense is doing a nice job already bringing out their names as much as they can to dilute any impact that anyone could place in that evidence. I mean, look, they have, the DA has a Mark Furman problem. They really do. I mean, it is what it is, and they can't get away from it. And it's so bad. I mean, when have you ever seen the defense argue that the cops are corrupt because they're trying to protect the cop? And wouldn't you know, the cop that they're accusing has a text message that says to his buddies, don't worry, he's a Boston cop, he's good. I mean, it's It's literally
And talking about
there.
yeah, and talking about the dudes. I mean,
it's not an argument. It's a hold the phone up. It's right there.
I mean, in the old days, right? Whitey Bulger could say a lot of bad things about him, but he was smart enough to realize, and this is before text. But Whitey Bulger would have never got caught doing text. Whitey Bulger like outwitted him with the phone taps and the taps at the business, at the garage on Lancaster Street, because he would go to Castle Island. He would go to a park outside where meet in person. There's an old criminal saying, like, don't put it in print. Don't text it if you can say it in person.
Or if you're going to, at least have a burner phone. My God, I mean, he did it on his own phone. I mean, which tells you he's not the brightest guy. You can be corrupt and stupid. They're not mutually exclusive traits. And he is just, I don't see how this guy, I mean, we've talked about this before. And the more I hear, and you see how the witnesses are contradicting what he wrote in his reports, we're still wondering, where is this video from the bar that showed that he was so detailed about at this time she got a drink, at this time she got a drink, yet we don't have it yet. And you start to wonder, how in the hell is this guy going to testify? Because on top of everything else that you've got them doing, can you imagine Proctor getting cross-examined with his paperwork about, he claims that he saw video from the waterfall with exact times showing exact things, and then Lally does not introduce that video. In other words, we're supposed to take your word for it. I mean, he's the kind of guy, I mean, we say this, about the case going on here about guys like Michael Cohen. Proctor is going to be the kind of witness where if he tells you tomorrow's Friday, I wouldn't take his word for it unless you look at a calendar first. I wouldn't take his word for anything.
Absolutely. We've had a lot of super chats tonight. Unfortunately, the StreamYard isn't able to bring them all up at once, so we lose them quickly with how many people are messaging. One of them that came in was asking about something we kind of talked about, but I think we should talk a little more about it. Is the judge's bias like today? What do you think? Because we've both been back and forth about this judge, whether she's fair or not. What do you think about the judge after today?
I don't read into stopping court at 12:30 because of whatever reason. Also, I don't think it's bad for the defense. I think primacy and recency, and the jury's doing what they're doing. I know a lot of people have been saying, look at the coughing and the looking. I'll be honest with you. I don't have time to even look at that stuff. I mean, people post clips. I can't tell. Part of the problem is you can't see Lally when everyone says, they're looking at each other and doing stuff the way the video is. I don't know. So obviously if she's doing that, that's terrible. I'm not saying she is. I just don't know. But her, as we said earlier, the frustration that I have, and I'm sure other lawyers would tell you, is I don't see any consistency or method to her madness in the rulings. It just seems to be, I don't want to hear this, so I'll object. And as we know, she doesn't want argument about the reasoning, and then everything's at sidebar. Some judges do it that way. It's not unheard of, but it just essentially gives her carte blanche to do it her way, and it's just my way, and that's it, and you're not going to argue about it. But these objections today, I thought, were improper. Her rulings, not the objections themselves. Well, I guess they were, because they should have been not dealt with, but they should have been allowed to dig much deeper into the relationship between Albert's, Proctor's, Berkowitz's, and just all the allegedly people that are involved to some extent in this cover-up or whatever, because there is more than enough evidence. There is more than enough good faith basis to at least allow them to attempt to expand upon, a third party culprit and everything out there. So I don't like it. I think there's no method to it. And I think she's been too restrictive on letting the defense expand and play out that evidence.
Awesome. We got since Mazda dropped off, we have another special unannounced guest for everyone. You don't even know about this, do you, Attorney Bederow? Who am I going to bring up right now? Do you know?
Spoiler alert. Yeah, somebody told me earlier.
Somebody told you. I knew word would get out. Does the chat know who I'm supposed to bring up right now? We have another guest here in the green room. Who do you guys want us to bring up right now? Post your who would you like us to see in the green room right now that's waiting for us? Someone said Sean. No, Sean's not doing shows right now. Turtle Boy, Sean, close. Turtle Boy, Olivia. Someone just said it. Olivia is who's here. Dee Dee called it first. Hey, Olivia Lambo, what's up?
Hello.
How you doing?
How's everyone doing?
Good.
Doing good. Everyone's saying Olivia, Sean, Turtle Boy. That's what we're seeing in the chat right now.
Defense attorneys, that would be amazing. But probably not until after the trial.
Yeah. So what did you think about today?
Oh my gosh. I mean, they just keep getting wrecked day after day. It's impressive almost. But I'm not, a huge person. Like, I'm not huge into body language or that sort of stuff because I like looking at the documents and the facts and everything. But watching Chris Albert and Julie Albert on the witness stand today, I was like, any body language expert is gonna have a field day with their testimony. I mean, they were like wiggling around the whole time, and yeah, I think what Mark was saying earlier too is interesting about how you can see like the stark contrast between how they answer questions when they're being questioned by the Commonwealth versus the defense. And, that can tell you a lot about if someone's telling the truth or not.
It can. And so I'm actually a really big believer in body language. I think it's a huge deal. And what you saw, the first thing I would say is look at the contrast between the witnesses yesterday and the witnesses today. People yesterday have no skin in the game. They're nervous, but they're nervous in an earnest and honest way. You can tell that they're hurt by losing their friend that they know. They know they're prosecution witnesses. They know they're on TV or whatever. They know that they're being forced to testify, against Karen Reed. But every single one of them yesterday of these group of bar witnesses who were called for some reason was completely open body language, appropriate in manner, in tone. Once they got going, they became relaxed. Some of them were even making some very funny jokes. Those are what credible witnesses are. Then you contrast that today where Chris Albert, even on direct, there's a smirk there. Okay. He's kind of like sitting at an angle, like, he's used to being the king of the castle, I think. But when it goes to cross, it's 180 degrees, and he wants to argue and parse words and do things like that. And then, you see somebody like Julie Albert, and that is, you could use her as the poster child of how to have atrocious manner on the witness stand. Okay. And it goes from the very beginning. When she comes in, she has this look on her face. The gum chewing again. Sorry to keep.
Oh my gosh.
She's snapping answers. Okay. And this is something that was really interesting in particular. Anytime there were questions about Colin, she snapped and was firm and changed her personality. No.
Yeah.
Answering
so was Chris too.
Yeah. Chris was also touching his ears and his nose and his head. He's twitching.
But Julie in particular was actually barking out answers about Colin before the questions were finished. And then, of course, you had her, that fiasco on cross where she was spitting out something about, her relationship with the Proctors that Lally was a little slow objecting, and she already answered. And, she looked like she basically, maybe that's where she swallowed her gum. I don't know. But she had that look on her face of, oh, shit, I shouldn't have done that. And everybody sees that. And it's such a weird, inappropriate reaction. You're there to answer questions. It's not a big deal. And so the body language on their witnesses who matter has been just awful. And you can see it. And I think jurors pay attention to that stuff. And this goes back to this is why it was critical that the defense took the little shitty courtroom. And people asked back then, was that the right move? And I said, absolutely. You have to see what's going on. And you can't be deterred by, people who live on Planet Wendy World and whatnot saying, oh my God, this is frivolous. This is a delay tactic. No, they want jurors to see these witnesses because they know what it's going to be.
They know that the body twitching and the angriness and
liars.
They're
lying, and it's obvious they're lying. And body language is a bigger giveaway. I mean, you could say something
subliminally. We pick it up without even realizing it. Like in everyday communication, body language is everything. We don't even think about it.
No, I mean, if I tell you right now, I'm really happy, but I'm saying, I'm really
you feel it without even thinking about it.
That's it. If I'm looking down and, what are my words the truth or my body language? I mean,
Or some kid who's slumped in a chair. It's like, oh, I'm paying attention. You know what I mean? Like, they're not. It's just, it means everything. So, and I think we brought up body language expert. I don't think this stuff's that difficult. Like, I think that most of us have it in us. We just have to think about it and look for the signs of it. And they are easy to read. They are easy to read.
These people are easy reads. Where you need the experts are like, when people start, their eyes are going this direction. I mean, not everybody understands that, but these people are easy to read for the simple thing that they're doing on cross-examination what you're never supposed to do. And presumably if Lally was prepping them, he would tell them this. You have to keep the same tone and attitude, even when you're being asked questions that you'd rather not, it's unpleasant and whatnot. And they're not. But look at what the witnesses yesterday were. You couldn't tell whether it was direct or cross just by watching their demeanor. You look at these people today, it's obvious.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't mean to poo-poo like the value of reading one's body language because, I think we're seeing this trial is a perfect example demonstrating just how valuable and critical it is. And, the defense's request to change the court or, to change the setup or the courtroom so that all the jurors could see the witnesses and see their full demeanor as they're testifying. It shows you why things like that are so important. I think this whole trial in general, I think it's going to be revolutionary for Americans to be reminded of why it is so critical to give every single criminal defendant the presumption of innocence, right? Because it's something I think that we take so much for granted and we are dismissive of, because the reality is the majority of criminal defendants are probably likely guilty of what they're being charged of. But what if they're, when there are people who are wrongfully charged for whatever reason, it's a reminder of just how critical and vital to our system the presumption of innocence is.
Yeah, because it's awful. And let's say it's only 1 out of 4 or 1 out of 5 or 1 out of 10. That's still a large number. They're innocent.
It happens a lot. More than you think. I again, not percentage a lot, but there are times, and I mentioned this maybe it was on Twitter or something the other day, but when you have a client like Karen Reed, it's a blessing and a curse at the same time. Lawyers, by definition and trade, as you could probably imagine, are egomaniacs. As part of that, you want big cases just for your own, what you do for a living. So everyone, what a great case. Fine. But now as you take on a case like this and you realize, wow, they're really coming after her. And I think she's actually innocent. Like she's literally getting screwed and could go to prison for something she had nothing to do with. That blessing becomes much more of a curse, because you sit there and you think about it all the time and lie awake at night and say, what if she gets convicted on my watch? This is, whether it's fair or not fair, you start saying, is this my fault? Why didn't I do this? Should I have done that? Did I screw up? Should she have hired someone? That kind of stuff is,
I can't even imagine that.
It's terrible.
Horrible.
It's horrible. Now, the good news is in this case, I mean, look, this should not getting convicted, but yeah.
But it's always terrifying to put. I
It
mean, you never. Juries are unpredictable, and
it's
know,
true. And you're right.
you never
And
know.
you never allow yourself to think about like what we're talking about now and say, oh, it's fine. I mean, they have tunnel vision and they're going to, club them on every point, every witness like they're doing now, and they're never going to let up. But on the other hand, they do look relaxed, Mike, like you were talking about earlier, as if, look, not relaxed that they're going to take their foot off the gas or their eye off the ball, but this case is so flawed in so many ways for so many reasons that I just, the idea that 12 people, okay, are going to say beyond a reasonable doubt to a moral certainty, it's just, I don't know what the jury is. You can't see them, but it just seems like very unlikely.
I hope so. We got another question. She wants to know if the order of the witnesses, which seems out of order, does it help give more time for the defense to build enough foundation to bring up the federal investigation with Proctor?
It's a good question. Yeah, I think they're out of order for sure. I think at this point, people are correct in noticing that why are the real investigators as opposed to the initially responding cops still not into this? So I think that's curious. And like we talked about earlier, if they're doing it the civilian way, how is McCabe not before all these other people? I agree with that. And I do think with what the question was, that by using these other witnesses first, it definitely allows more of this Proctor, like it's going to come out tomorrow with Julie. I would be asking them, did you speak to him, and keep reminding everyone that he took statements. And so I think the question's a good one. And the answer is yes. The more they drag this out, the more the jury hears about him, that it's going to lead if he comes in, to more jury awareness before he opens his mouth that this guy is a disaster. Yes.
And they become more familiar with them earlier on, which is great. Drip, they're dripping on them. Go ahead, Olivia.
And not only that, tomorrow, I believe Brian Albert is slated to testify. And if you remember, after the defense and the prosecution both received the TUI evidence from the federal investigation, the defense immediately filed a flurry of Rule 17 motions seeking the third-party cell phone records for Brian Albert, Brian Higgins, Kevin Albert, and Berkowitz. And so there's probably so much more for, tomorrow, just to anticipate. Like, there's so much more that we haven't heard about in motion hearings, in oral arguments, in pretrial motions, because those records were something that they got right before trial started, pretty much. So, like, there could be a lot of information coming out tomorrow with those records. And because even today we saw how Yannetti referenced with Julie Proctor, he referenced the communication logs between her and Courtney Proctor, which is interesting because they didn't file Rule 17 motion for those third-party records, which I suppose is not necessary if you're not going to be entering the third-party record, because you would need to get it in admissible form if you're going to enter it into the record.
Right.
But if you're going to use it, I guess, for
from the feds, they probably got it from the feds, right?
No, because the feds had Brian Higgins, Brian Albert, Berkowitz, and Kevin Albert's phone records and phone information. But the defense, for any third-party records that the feds had or used in their investigation, the defense had to file a Rule 17 motion independently to obtain any third-party records that they wanted in admissible form to use at trial. But this may be a question for Mark. If you're impeaching a witness with information from third-party records, or I guess information that would have been from the federal investigation, like with the Julie Albert and Courtney Proctor communications today, do you need to have those records in admissible form?
No, you can impeach anyone if it will work with a napkin, if there's a reason for it.
Because you can just refresh their memory with the
Yes,
right?
although, and I've seen this a lot in this trial, which is interesting. I've seen a lot of, refreshing recollection, which normally, not always, but normally is a kind of thing you do on direct examination. On cross-examination, you impeach, and if you can. Now, if their witness claims ignorance and you have to stick it in their face, sometimes you just say, does this refresh your recollection? But no, I mean, so if they want to ask, like Julie Albert today, about how many times she spoke to him, and then my recollection is that it was kind of a surprise answer, and he kind of did a double take and then gathered himself in 2 seconds and pounced on this right away. They have the records. The witness presumably knows you're standing there with a stack of paper. You can use whatever you have to just impeach. And then, of course, what did she do? She rolled right over and accepted it. And part of the reason, look, if she ultimately says, I don't know, and those aren't my phone records, so I can't say, in the normal case, that can frustrate you. It could block off a path if the witness denies it. The problem they have here is the feds have everything, and she knows it.
Right.
Okay?
But she's not acting like she knows it. I mean, like, you would assume these people know the feds are investigating and they have access to anything, right? Anything at their disposal.
They
So
should.
why would you lie about something like that on the stand? Or why would you be evasive or presenting like you're hiding something? I mean,
unless
unless you in fact are.
unless it's not her on the phone.
Oh, what do you mean by
The
that?
husbands are
That
talking.
if
She doesn't even know that there's the number of calls going on. He just,
in other words,
calling.
it's just kind of, I mean, look, Proctor, we know what he is. We know what he does. And I don't want to get all tinfoil hat with this stuff. I'm not suggesting this is a guaranteed thing, but it's not impossible in a literal sense that she did not have phone conversations. As I made a joke earlier.
Right.
I mean, this could be like Casino, right? Where they have the wives call and then they hand the phones to Joe Pesci and De Niro and they talk in code for 30 seconds and then they hand the phone back and hang up. I don't know, but I mean, it'll be curious to see, why would Courtney Proctor and brain fart, Julie Albert. Why would they be having 67 phone calls about this? And the question I'd ask is, was Michael Proctor having conversations with all of these so-called people that are of interest in the Alberts? And if not, then you start to wonder, was that him now realizing I can't be doing this? I mean, there had to be a point where even somebody like him after the early stages, the first couple of days, had to realize, I cannot believe I just sent my high school dopes this information that I did. I mean, he can't be that dumb. And the interesting thing is, when they announced it in court the other day in the opening statement and everybody wanted to fall out of their chair, they only referenced about 3 or 4 texts from the very early part of the investigation.
The first day.
Which may suggest this dummy realized I should not be doing that and kill it.
Good point.
I have to talk if I'm going to do this
in person.
Way. And, the logical way would be, my wife or Albert to my sister.
Yeah, that's a good point. And you know what? That actually speaks to a larger issue, which it's something I've always taken great issue with in this investigation or this case. If you guys recall DA Michael Morrissey's video statement that he put out to all the media last August.
Yes.
In it, he states that he says John O'Keefe's cell phone shows he did not go inside that house. Well, first of all, I mean, just anybody who's like ever followed any criminal trials recently knows that okay, cell phones are incredibly informative. They're your digital footprint, but GPS data, you never ever see police officers trying to limit their scope, like in terms of a GPS field where a phone could be. They're not going, I've never seen police claim that they can determine with such precision down to the foot, down to 10 feet, down to 30 feet, because the difference between the front door of that house, 34 Fairview, and where Officer O'Keefe's body was found is 45 feet. GPS data from cell phones is usually, they'll usually like limit it down to 200 feet at the most, but on average 300 feet. And then they'll look everywhere within that, 300-foot wide radius circle. But anyways, that's besides the point. Going back to what you were saying, Mark, is just because it's, Julie's phone, or just because it's John O'Keefe's phone, doesn't mean that the activity on it was that person doing it. Like John O'Keefe, just because his phone may show, a location over here, or steps being taken over here, or a phone call being answered 4 minutes after the state's theory in all of their recent filings, where they claim John is killed at 12:25 a.m., but he answers a call 4 minutes later. So just because John's phone shows something, this prosecution hasn't proven that John O'Keefe had his cell phone on him when he was walking into the house, when he got out of the car, when he went into the house. Like, what if he dropped it when he made a bolt out of the car, made a bolt for the front door, and he dropped his cell phone on the front yard? You know what I'm saying? Like, that's not proof that John O'Keefe didn't go inside the house. It might be proof that his phone didn't go inside the house, but it's such a cop out, because it's like they didn't even do their so-called GPS analysis of his cell phone until 15 months after the fact, at which point the defense had already implicated the investigators and the witnesses, and they didn't use a forensic method to do their analysis of his GPS data on his phone. And I can't wait to see that get completely shredded at trial.
You just made a perfect segue to go back, using the cell phone issue, to go back to Morrissey for a minute, and that ridiculous and unethical statement he made. And here's the bottom line with that. And this was mentioned a few days ago, but maybe there's different people listening. Every state basically has the same rule on trial publicity. It's rule 3.6. And if it's not 50 out of 50, I assure you Massachusetts is identical to New York. So on this issue, I know exactly what I'm talking about. So there are ethical rules for lawyers, a rule of professional conduct, which strictly limits what a party in the case, meaning the lawyer for either side, is allowed to say publicly. And if you make any statement which could reasonably be interpreted to potentially prejudice a jury pool, you can't say it. So there are certain topics that are verboten. And one of those topics are, for example, like the allegation that the defendant said something. So if he said at a press conference, and we have evidence that Karen Reed said I hit him, that's unethical. But another one of those is the results of scientific examinations or things like that, which would include cell phone analysis. Okay. Mm-hmm. So already he is making unethical statements, which he ought to know. He's the elected official. But on top of that, to Olivia's point, it's not accurate. He's misleading. So and this is exactly why the rules are designed to not allow this. He's telling the public, as it turns out incorrectly, that we know for a fact that he didn't go in the house. And you don't know that. Your science is very flawed, as Olivia just very articulately said, or could be flawed. And he's telling everyone,
they used a search and rescue app, a consumer-based search and rescue app, where they physically went to the scene and measured out with yardsticks GPS data points, unknown GPS data points that they selected from his phone data. And the app doesn't even exist anymore today. They didn't you know what Massachusetts State Police uses in every criminal investigation for doing a forensic analysis on cell phone location data? they use CellHawk, which is a forensic tool by Hawk Analytics. But on this investigation, they conveniently avoided using that forensic tool that they always rely on, which is very curious. But you know who didn't? The defense. They did a CellHawk analysis. So it'll be interesting to see that.
That's going to be awesome to see the difference between the CellHawk and what was the name of the one that they use, the consumer grade again?
It was called Sartopo app, which is a search and rescue app that no longer exists. Which, why are you using a search and rescue app to do a forensic analysis of GPS data?
Yeah.
And by the way, if the defense has the technical knowledge, what you're describing right now through their own experts, I would be trying to find a way to cross-examine and get that in front of the jury, that how convenient for some reason that because there are so many oddities, and this is another oddity. And, why is that? And I think a jury would be troubled by the fact that, on this particular case, you're using, crappy technology that doesn't even exist. I mean, it may not even be generally accepted, in the scientific community. It may not even be admissible at this point, passing.
There's nothing scientific about it.
Right.
I'm sorry, I'm speaking lawyer. Daubert is the federal case that, before scientific evidence can be admitted, it has to, pass a threshold of reliability and acceptance and all of that. And the fact that they're using this, crappy technology that no longer is valid, the reality is, this DA should no longer be valid, and they should just take them and get them out of there, bring someone else in. And, and that's also, fate works in terrible ways. If there had been an election or this guy was gone during the pendency of this case, who knows what, a real DA who reevaluated this, who comes in, might have done. They might have said, I'm ending this nightmare. I'm killing this.
I wish the AG would step in, the Attorney General, somehow. But
they're all politically connected.
Exactly.
They don't want to step on, Morrissey, who's been a political hack in Massachusetts for probably longer than I've been alive.
Exactly.
I'm not even that young. It just,
I mean, they saw what they all went after Rachel Rollins. So, I mean, I think they've seen that already.
Rachel Rollins.
Yeah. It's another, we're not going to talk about Rachel.
You don't want me talking about
I had her on the show right before she got elected. I was loving her for a little bit, but then, she went bad. But let's talk about this this one here. We got a funny comment, and I'm putting it up because I want to put this guy to bed. Basically, it's time to put up or shut up. This guy's been he's been talking a lot of kind of conspiracy theories. He sends all the different shows money to try to get his conspiracy. I'm going to call it that. And tonight he's saying Brian Albert is going to admit he was the killer tomorrow. He made a deal with the feds. He's not going to allow his nephew and others to go down for the murder. So what I like about this is that if you're wrong, we don't have to listen to you anymore. Right? Right, Nick? I'm just putting that out there. What do you guys think about this statement here?
Can I explain how this works? So we're being told that he made a deal with the feds, and presumably when you go to the feds and say, I just want to let you know that I murdered this man in my house and then covered it up, and I dumped stuff here and there, and I dumped them on the lawn. Okay. Presumably that deal with the feds would also involve close to life in a federal penitentiary. And presumably Brian Albert would not be walking into court free today. The other problem you might have, depending on what the feds are doing, murder is generally, with certain exceptions, a state crime.
Case.
Yeah.
So it
Ask
requires
Keith, like the Tupac killer, Keith D. Same thing.
Requires some form of federal jurisdiction that, at least at the moment, I can't think of. So I feel confident in saying no.
Yeah, that's not going to happen. So I think, Nick, you're wrong. And I think after tomorrow, if that doesn't happen, we don't have to hear about your stuff anymore. What do you think about this, Olivia?
I mean, just judging based on Brian Albert's track record in the pretrial proceedings of this case, every single time he's been asked or requested for his cell phone records or the records for the animal control and Canton Town Clerk records pertaining to his dog, family, 7 years, family canine German Shepherd that he rehomed right after this incident. He immediately lawyered up, which no problem with lawyering up, but he has steadfastly fought vehemently against having to turn over anything, which, you know, again, I'm also not saying that you're necessarily, people have the right to their privacy, but first of all, in a normal investigation where you don't have corrupt or conflicted investigators, those cell phone records would have already been in evidence from the beginning. Like, you get the cell phone records from everyone there, right? Isn't that a great way to disprove any defense third party culprit narratives? But no, instead he's fought steadfastly against having to essentially cooperate and turn over any records or turn over anything that, if you were innocent and you were sleeping at 2 a.m., well, there would be nothing to see, right? Like, there wouldn't be anything there. But as we found out, since the federal production of the evidence produced by the feds, he's lied about a lot of things. I mean, he even lied about the whole story surrounding the rehoming of his dog, because the Judge Beverly Cononi, actually did rule in the defense's favor for them to get access to those records. And both his attorney, Greg Henning, who's Brian Albert's attorney, and DA Adam Lally represented to the court that this is an absurd suggestion by the defense. The dog didn't have any violent skin piercing incidents. It didn't have any incidents with humans. It just got into attacks with neighborhood dogs. And then, sure enough, the defense get their hands on the records, and what the defense asserted from the very beginning was absolutely correct. The dog had at least two violent skin piercing incidents, sending 2 humans to the hospital. And yeah, sure, the dogs were involved, but that doesn't exclude the fact that there were humans who were also violently attacked.
Right.
And so anyway, long story short, based on his just refusal to cooperate or to turn over evidence, tells me that he probably isn't going down for everybody.
Right.
No.
He's not going down for everyone. And people are asking if he's got a proffer. He doesn't have a. Brian Albert, as far as we know, has no federal proffer. That was just a statement we put up from someone who's a conspiracy theorist. And I just wanted to hold them to account, because I don't think that's going to happen tomorrow. And I want him to know that when you make these kind of crazy statements, we hold you to account. Like, we don't have to listen to it after tomorrow, right? If Brian Albert doesn't admit it in front of the world.
Right.
So
we don't have to listen to it today.
yeah. Good.
That's true. There's
That's
two
true.
thoughts that come from this interesting conversation. One side point on this nonsense. If this guy pled guilty in federal court to murder, okay, I guarantee you, the Charles Barkley guarantee they would literally march down to the Norfolk DA's office and say, this case is over, okay? And they would explain why he pled, what he did, and there'd be no trial in state court for him to do that. So let's put that aside. But two little sub points, in terms of like what the DA is representing, and it's turning out not to be true. Part of the problem is, when Lally is making these representations, he is in essence acting as the useful idiot for the Alberts and whoever. So when Lally gets up and says this dog never made any bites, he doesn't do any independent investigation. He's just regurgitating what Brian Albert tells him. He is like the quintessential definition of the useful idiot. When he said another time that Julie, only watches Proctor's kids in a pinch, that's being the useful idiot. He didn't do any investigation. He's saying what he's told. The other thing is this, that you can't ignore with the feds, and this is really interesting to me, and I know we hit on this a little bit last night, but different audience or not, it's worth repeating. we don't know who has spoken to the feds, okay, other than we think Higgins
Right.
for sure.
Right.
But anyone who spoke to the feds is subjecting themselves to a federal crime if they lie and testify in oath to the opposite in the state court. So, which starts to make you wonder, okay, why today did both Alberts, Chris and Julie, say, I never went to 34 Fairview? Okay. The story that has been told before today, based upon their statements to the police and what everybody thought, was that they did go to 34 Fairview. Now, so you have to think there's one of two things going on, and they're aware of the federal investigation. No, that's one of my dogs barking in the back. So that's one of
Is
my.
that a hound? It sounds like a hound.
Is
No,
that
that's Lola the mutt. We have like a pedigreed lab and Lola the mutt. That's
Oh, I
Lola.
love labs. And I love mutts
She's
too.
50%. God knows, we don't know what she is. We need to get her DNA test.
Oh, she sounds beautiful.
Yeah,
I love her.
Well,
Tell
she
her
may
I love her.
at some point. Lola, come on in.
Yeah.
We'll see if she does. But the Alberts may have one of two things. Okay, spoken to the feds, told them we never went there, and so they have to do that. Or two, with all of the crazy technological cell phone and GPS data that Olivia was talking about before, the feds may know conclusively, no, you weren't. And the Alberts know, no, we weren't. So all of a sudden they have no choice but to come in and say, I wasn't there. And then you ask yourself, well, why did they say it back then? And the answer could have been because the more people that are witnesses, quote unquote, inside that house who say nothing happened, what's more likely, whether you have Proctor or not? Most people are going to say, why would they lie? Why would they lie? And what is the useful idiot Lally doing? What is his main point? We have all these witnesses who say nothing happened, right? And the FBI woman and the Wendy world, they all pick up on this, right? And they say this case against Karen Reed is strong because everyone in the house says they weren't there, and they're all useful idiots, but they don't do any analysis, and that's what's so confounding about this.
Yes, people, pretty much. That's what it is.
Like I saw some of her other stuff, the FBI woman today, and she's saying, oh, she probably did it because of the witnesses and this. And it's like she forgot the most critical thing. A witness can say something, but there's like a second level to this. Are they credible? Anybody can say anything. It doesn't make you credible. And they just credit what is said. And I mean,
it's astounding.
They're just useful idiots. It's unbelievable. They do no critical thinking at all. And it's embarrassing. And to do this to Karen Reed with a guy like Lally, with a case like this, with witnesses like that, and just throw them up there and not prep them and all of this, it's disgraceful.
Yeah, it truly is. And I like something that I always love to say is people lie, data don't, right? So it's like, that's why one of the first things that police officers, investigators
look at your phones.
Looking at your phones, but like in any investigation, they show up. One of the first things they're looking for is surveillance footage, right in the area. And like when you're fortunate enough and when you're lucky enough to have surveillance cameras, particularly one that is pointing directly at the crime scene at the neighboring house across the street, in the murder of a Boston police officer, that's like the first thing that you are doing at anything possible you're getting that camera. You're not bypassing it. Like you're going to every neighboring, any possible house. But no, the closest surveillance camera that they went and bothered to retrieve footage from to the crime scene was over a mile away from the crime scene. They didn't go to any of the neighbors' houses. There's plenty of neighbors along Fairview Road that have, home security cameras. And it's just, when you see so many examples of that, it's not incompetence. It's the, like we said, it's like the murder of a police officer. This is going to be most certainly the investigation.
All hands on deck. Believe me,
right.
When it's not a corrupt investigation, murder of a police officer, trust me, I've seen some of this, not directly but seeing how this works in a TA's office, you'll get 80 detectives who will work 24 hours a day and turn over every rock within a 200-mile radius to do that. But Olivia, let me ask you this, because I know you literally are the walking encyclopedia of the facts. Are you saying that they never went down, didn't even try? Because we were talking about this earlier before you got on. We didn't really know the answer to this. They never went down Fairview Road looking for other ring video. They didn't even try to do that.
Well, it's not like particularly documented. I mean, as we know, they seem to struggle with the whole record keeping phenomenon here. And no, there's not. I mean, there's not documentation showing them doing that. Which I mean, it's just reaffirmed by the fact that there are numerous. I mean, probably hundreds of cameras along the route between 34 Fairview and John O'Keefe's house that Karen Reed would have driven home. And they didn't even bother to grab surveillance footage from any of them, when surveillance footage in this case, if their theory is correct, is it's the necessity to prove your case, right? Because the whole case hinges on the very physical status or condition of the taillight at a certain time. They haven't even established that Karen Reed's taillight wasn't broken before they claim she hit John O'Keefe.
You know what's unbelievable? I mean, you wouldn't even know that this man who lost his life was a police officer by watching this trial. Okay.
Yeah, it's really sad.
One of the sad things of this whole thing is he's being treated as just the vessel to bring the case.
Right.
And it's horrible. But, you know, to go back to something Olivia just said, and from my own knowledge and experience, it is amazing. I mean, where was O'Keefe the day before he died? In New York City at a police officer's funeral, right? He was
Brian Albert.
That was Brian Higgins and Brian Albert.
Right. That's because that's what cops do. I remember that police death. I mean, there's a lot of them down here, unfortunately. But the fact, I mean, it wasn't an on-the-job killing. We all understand that. But the fact that they knew John O'Keefe was a police officer, they knew right away. In fact, during one of the first calls, we heard the evidence that he's a cop. And the callousness of these dopes in the Canton Police Department who testified, who made no effort. The state police were not coming down for a suspicious death of a police officer who lived in that town, and they never did it. And that in and of itself is suspicious, okay? Because I can pretty much assure you, if this was not a case where the Alberts and that group were somehow arguably involved and it wasn't their lawn, I think the cops would have tried to put some effort into solving a suspicious death of a police officer. They didn't do it in this case because they couldn't, because it's the Alberts. And as you know, Proctor said, we're good. You know, everyone's fine because they're cops. We can't do this. But they never looked at the real cop in this case, who unfortunately was lying dead on the lawn.
Well, here's the other thing too, is, you know, if the friends or not, I mean, you shouldn't have an investigation where the investigators are friends with the people they're investigating. God. But even if there is some connection, okay, or if there's not, wouldn't they want to investigate inside Brian Albert's house, investigate Brian Albert, investigate all the witnesses? I mean, that's just investigation 101, right? You want to rule out every other potential prospect, but also, wouldn't they want to do that almost as like a favor to them? Because if you don't ever investigate,
you want to rule them out.
The house,
rule them out.
You're actually creating this possible line of defense for a defendant.
Exactly.
I'm going to take the other side on this. Not other side, other analytical side of this. What this is, you know, forget it, Jake. It's Chinatown. That's what this is. Okay. And the answer was this. I think they're not going to, you know, clear them and build a paper trail to defend it. They're going to bury it. And the way they're going to bury it is we're going to have 10 witnesses in the house who say John O'Keefe never came in, and then Proctor's going to say, my God, I wish she would just kill herself, make it easy, and it's done, and no one's ever going to look at this. That's how they were going to bury it. And that's why I think the earlier statements have the two witnesses today, their first statement was, we were in the house, because I think they were going to pile on because they were going to get the useful idiots. There's Lally and those people again, who are all going to say, obviously nothing happened in this house, because I mean, would 10 people say that? It literally is the ending scene of Chinatown. Like, forget it.
Yeah,
Nope.
I agree with you. And I think that they just were assuming that Karen Reed would take a plea deal, that she would plea out, she wouldn't fight back. And I think that is supported by a lot of very curious and suspicious facts when you look at the procedural history of this case. You want to know something crazy? They didn't even so when Karen Reed was first charged and arrested on February 1st, 2022, she wasn't charged with any type of alcohol charge. So like or under the influence, intoxication or under the influence charge. That didn't come until the indictment, the grand jury indictment. And what is profound is, I mean, if anybody has, been watching and you're aware of how they obtained and conducted their extrapolation analysis using, faulty blood pull from the hospital that was obtained under questionable circumstances, and using unreliable, just uncertified by the Mass State Police themselves methods to analyze this blood and also doing the extrapolation analysis. They didn't conduct any of that analysis or do any of the testing or get the reports or anything for that until May of 2022. So she was arrested in February of 2022. They didn't do that until months later, which to me, I mean, you look at that in the context of everything else that they were doing. It just looks like they were probably shocked that she wasn't playing out. She wasn't playing ball with them. And so they had to, ramp it up.
So
that's why Proctor wanted her to unalive herself, because she didn't do it.
Here, I think you're probably right the way they thought this through. But what I'm struggling with is, and I know who we're dealing with, so maybe it's kind of a self-fulfilling statement, but these people cannot be that dumb to think that someone like her, who is intelligent, educated, sophisticated, and let's be honest, access to means to get real lawyers, very intelligent, educated parents to talk to about just not somebody who's 21 years old and thinks, oh my God, I mean, just somebody who.
I think it's a sign that they've gotten away with this before. Like they've bullied people before, and they just
kind of people that you roll are like,
I get it.
Losers.
Yeah, but it starts to get to your head. You think you're untouchable. You think you can get away with anything.
That somebody like her was going to get a real lawyer right away, not just because of the means, but remember, go back to the other thing I told you earlier about lawyers are egomaniacs. Okay, every lawyer would be jumping to get this case. I mean, no question. Okay. And that's without even saying she's guilty or innocent. You're like, oh, it's a great case. It's interesting. But to think that because, McCabe said, oh, she was drinking, and then these corrupt cops allegedly arrest her, that, well, don't worry about it. We'll just bury this. And if she doesn't unalive herself, as you said, we'll just go through it. And we always do it. Mike, I think you're right. There's such a level of power and corruption that they start believing their own hype. And it's arrogance, like somebody just said, but it's worse because, anybody can be arrogant, but these people have power.
Yeah, that's a scary thing.
It so dangerous that they literally, if you credit what the defense is saying, and there seems to be, a fair reason to do so, that they literally have the ability to just, make her a patsy, which is essentially what the defense is arguing. And 2 weeks into the trial, there's much more evidence of that than she's done
Right.
anything
And
wrong.
we haven't heard the defense yet. We
And
have,
you
they
haven't
haven't brought their
know
witnesses.
how.
And
Yeah.
I'm going to say this I promised the last time tonight anyway. On top of all this, you get these people, oh, well, wait till you see her text messages and you hear this, and we're going to prove this and that. There are going to be 3 accident reconstruction people who are all going to say, we have worked for the government in the past. We are not like hired gun, whore experts that some people like to describe them as, who say, pay us to do this. And they're going to say, it couldn't be, and they're going to explain, I don't know the science of it, but they're going to explain why it couldn't be, and they're all going to say it. And I'll bet you part of the explanation is going to be what we talked about the other night, is the whole polycarbonate,
Polycarbonate, yeah.
it doesn't do it.
Safety glass.
Yeah.
That's what safety glass. I mean,
Yeah,
same thing.
I think that's going to be a big part of it, as well as, the defense medical expert is going to say that medically it just doesn't seem to work.
Well, speaking to what you actually, I think I heard you say this last night or the other night, Mark, on the show. You were saying how, if the prosecution really had a robust and legitimate case, you'd be seeing people on their witness list, for instance, like an expert from Lexus or someone to come and speak to the properties of the taillight, like the polycarbonate, or all of that sort of stuff. They don't have any experts from Lexus. They don't have any accident reconstructionists. They don't have any really experts related
except
to the
the
car.
Celebrate guy. That's it.
The defense has, the defense has 3 of them, 3 reconstructionists, and a separate expert who is going to be testifying about the what's it called, the keystrokes or something with the car. So like, the cars have a certain it basically related to the vehicle data that the defense has coming to testify for them. But also, side note, just for people who are watching right now, if you don't know this, Karen's EDR, her black box, showed no events. So like that alone just kind of debunks the prosecution narrative.
This is part of like the TED Talk that they need, to go back to that, funny thing, but it's not funny, which is, if you're going to indict someone for this kind of crime with this kind of penalty, with all this crazy stuff going around, and for some reason that none of us can comprehend, you're going to do it, which is like essentially career suicide for everyone involved, and deservedly so, by the way. But if you're going to do it, my God, you need a witness from Lexus. You need the light manufacturer. You may need a mechanic or somebody to say that light is consistent with this. And if there's a way to extrapolate or make better that, so-called bombshell, which was more like a, dud firecracker, that when the car was parked at, 8 a.m. in John O'Keefe's house, you need to do something with that. Another example, if the defense is calling 3 accident, as you just said, Olivia, 3 accident reconstruction experts, and you're not calling any, so you're just going to take it. You're just going to,
that'll be.
And Lally's going to, regale us with his wonderful cross-examination skills of these 3 guys.
What if any, who if any, where if any.
I mean, and when he's telling them about polycarbonate lighting and this and injuries and this, and his medical examiner is going to say, I couldn't even call this a homicide. Okay. But I could tell you, not a fight.
Unbelievable.
This is, listen, when this case is over and if they make it to verdict, or if it goes to verdict and she gets acquitted, they should all be fired. Every one of them. Now, I know you can't literally have like no police force in the town, but anyone who is involved directly in this, I'm not kidding.
I couldn't agree more.
From the DA's office,
we all agree. Everyone agrees on that.
Too. When, look, before I was, a so-called sleazy lawyer trying to make a living and earn some money, I was one of the government guys. So I know how they work and what they do. And when you're a young prosecutor and you go there, I'm going to go get the bad guys, but you also don't want to get, you don't want to get the wrong people. And these people have ignored every single red flag. They don't care whether it's on purpose, whether they're useful idiots, whether it's Morrissey giving these ridiculous, press conferences where he's acting as personal counsel to these people. It is such a disgrace at every level, from the Canton police to the state police to the Norfolk DA's office. All of them should just be washed away, thrown out, and the whole town, law enforcement mechanism and county, it needs to be fumigated, because even if you think she's guilty, you should not be ethically prosecuting unless you damn well know you can prove it. Okay. Somebody's life is in the balance. This isn't an exercise to try to get Lally trial practice on a big case, and he needs a lot of it. But you do that with mock trials or something else, not this. And to subject this, and there's so much harm, and it creates a lot of these, online clowns and other people, and this is going to follow her forever. And
and even
it's horrible.
And even if you think she's guilty, you should be, if anything, you should be equally, if not more, appalled by the investigation, because then that means that due to the utter, the just complete incompetence or corruption of the investigation, that she's not going to be held to account. Like, if you think she's guilty, right? Because those misgivings or that malfeasance of the investigators is what will acquit her. So if you care about justice, you should just be equally as pissed off about the investigation in this case, because
they're not, though. They're mad at all of us for talking about it.
Here's the thing: when they're alerted, or they learn, I shouldn't even say they're alerted, but they, witnesses are saying we're getting calls from the feds. Obviously anyone's going to be pissed off, because lawyers are egomaniacs, and people like Morris seem like, who the hell are you to get into my case? And they all, that happens all the time between different agencies and whatnot. But at the same time, any serious prosecutor, like theoretically Morrissey is supposed to be, would say, well, why are they doing this? What's going on? Are we okay? Like, are we doing something wrong? Or is there reason to be thinking that there's people here that are bad eggs and that she just might not have done this? And his response was to write a little crybaby letter to the Office of Professional Responsibility, whining about, the U.S. attorney for the District of Massachusetts, has it in for me.
Insane.
This is like a child running the Norfolk County DA's office, and then his
talk to your boss
is to go say, stop harassing witnesses. Okay, that's true. You should not harass witnesses. But then he turns that into, stop harassing witnesses because she's guilty. Leave everyone alone. These are good people. And by the way,
credible people.
Proctor is a good agent, and he doesn't know the Alberts.
And Colin wasn't in the house.
It's all a lie.
Yeah. Colin wasn't in the house, and now we find out he probably was in the house today.
Colin wasn't in the house. Another good boy. I know. They're all good people.
It's like, how do you remain in a position as a prosecutor where the very ethos of your position, of your duties, is to be just a paragon of honesty and integrity, because you have so much power, because you have the power to literally take people's freedom away, to charge and prosecute people. And so when there's any display of you, the prosecutor, doing anything to the contrary, being unethical, being dishonest, going on record before a defendant's trial and telling the public that Trooper Proctor didn't know these witnesses, he didn't go to the scene on the day of the crime, and he had no reason to step out of this investigation, and anything to the contrary is a lie. And then that turns out to be actually you're lying, DA Morrissey. Like, when the majority of the things that he states as fact in that video are they turn out to be lies that proven by the federal investigation. How do you even stay in the position as a DA? You've lost all credibility, you lost all reliability, and
no, he ought to be ethically investigated. That press conference it was unethical for 27 different reasons. And somebody's asking like, well, he needs to take the stand. He'll have his chance, because after this case is over and Karen Reed sues everyone for tens of millions of dollars from, every agency that you can think of within the 50-mile radius, he'll be a material witness, because, I don't want to get all Nixonian on you, but, they're going to want to know, what did you know and when did you know it? And, he's the head of the snake. And, he, at the end of the day, he authorizes this case to go forward. Okay. He had the power, and still does, frankly, to kill it. And he won't.
Right.
Instead, he doubles and triples down. And, the same with the state police. I mean, they're still letting, this one cop run around and make cases,
Insane.
which is absolute insanity.
The Attorney General has done nothing on this. If Karen Reed is found innocent, could we demand that she does like a special prosecutor, special investigation of Norfolk County District Attorney? Is that something could happen?
That's interesting. First of all, she won't be found innocent. She'll be found not guilty.
Not guilty.
But I know what you mean.
Yeah.
This is interesting, because in that case that, I've regaled you with before, the FBI agent, when the woman who lied, we demanded a special prosecutor be appointed to investigate her for perjury, and they did. And, they picked up a retired judge who was in private practice and investigated her for about 7 or 8 months. And then they decided, well, she clearly, said things that are lies and this, but, it doesn't rise to the level of provable perjury, which is very hard to prove, by the way. And that's why, I had even mentioned before, when people were asking, your favorite EMT, Katie McLaughlin, she's not getting prosecuted for perjury.
Yeah.
It's not going to
rarely.
Yeah.
Rarely.
No way they're going to parse out friend and acquaintance. And you could bring in 800 more pictures. No prosecutors charging her she's just going to be not credible and thrown out. And, and unfortunately for her, it's a public proceeding. So she's kind of, going to be
shamed.
It's sad, because she's probably the cleanest one of all of them.
But do you think there's any chance that the AG could pull off something like that we could force her to actually investigate Norfolk County, or is it just the feds are going to take care of that?
No, you don't. I mean, look, you need to go straight to the big leagues. If there is like systemic and actual corruption in the state police, potentially to some extent the Canton Police Department, even, I mean, as frightening as it is, to some extent, maybe the DA's office. I want to believe that they're more useful idiots. I don't know that they are. It could be worse, but they're part of the investigation. That is all the feds. And look, that's what they're doing now. We don't know if it's going to lead to anything or what they're going to do, but so the feds are looking into it, and somebody's asking a pretty good question, actually, how they could do this, knowing fighting.
Well, they could step in right before the case is handed over to the jury, before it goes to verdict, and indict them.
They won't do that. That would create havoc. I mean, the reality is they do their investigations and they take forever because they're methodical, they're careful, and also they may not have a case yet. They may not have what they need to do it. And I'm sure from their perspective, they would not want the trial to happen, because what's the doomsday scenario? What if somebody gets convicted when we're investigating the people that are doing it? I don't know if they ever had any discussions about either side trying to get them to delay the case or not. Well, I mean, she certainly has the right to a speedy trial, and if she's going to get acquitted, she may want it anyway. I also think that there's less pressure on the feds, and also, of course, everyone else, because she's not incarcerated. I think if she was incarcerated and they were to say, why don't you wait 5 months while we investigate this? I mean, that's a tough sell to somebody sitting in a jail cell. But
I mean, my only contention with that is that the DOJ, so Josh Levy, the sitting or acting U.S. attorney, apparently in a meeting with both the prosecution and the defense back in January, told them that in good conscience, they being the feds, can't let this go to trial. So,
well,
I'd
be freaking out if I heard the U.S. attorney say that to the DA, that like, we think this is a miscarriage
Mm-hmm.
that could be happening. So how
And the
they,
Yeah.
DA didn't dispute that. They didn't dispute that point. So I think that that's pretty reliable fact that that statement was made. I mean, does that mean that they just didn't ever foresee a world where after they produced all of that exculpatory evidence in the TUI production, where any DA's office could move forward still, and maybe they underestimated just how corrupt this DA's office is?
Yeah.
Or were they saying it because they in fact meant that they were going to, intervene in some way?
I think they would probably say it, even if they felt that at least at this point, we think there's a possibility of corruption and the evidence supports that. We're not there yet. I mean, if I were the feds and that's all I had, I would be telling people, you know what, I really think everybody should take a pause. But in terms of the DA hearing that and not being disturbed about it, it also becomes problematic in the sense the feds probably, the people they're investigating are the people we're talking about. And so it's not like they want to share investigative information
Right.
with the state investigators who are under investigating. I mean, that sounds
Of
like,
Yeah.
course.
You don't want to do that.
she sells seashells by the seashore, where I'm talking about all these investigators, but they can't give up what they have, because, and also, the whole sources and means. Are there informants? Are there people
Mhm.
cooperating that, you have no clue? So they can't do that. But the fact that the DA at that point doesn't at least do an independent reevaluation, and if nothing else, say, how are we going to convict her? I mean, that could be their cop out, which is, we've determined that, we just can't prove it beyond a reasonable doubt, and we walk away. I mean, they're really bold in that they are willing to call these witnesses, assuming they're willing to testify and perhaps perjure themselves, that, their representative Lally is willing to make arguments which arguably he may know are materially false, or he should know, or, a reasonable prosecutor would, and subject themselves to criminal, civil liability, all this stuff. In some ways, it's crazy. I mean, if they can't read the room when the feds come in and say, we don't think you should be proceeding because, and we feel like morally you shouldn't do this. I understand the agencies don't like and respect each other, but that's something I would not
Yeah.
lightly.
So I get 8:27. We definitely should wrap it up now. What are your final thoughts? We'll start with Olivia tonight, from either today or anything, maybe tomorrow, what you're looking at. I also want to thank the Galera, who just gifted 10 Young Jerks memberships out to our listeners. That dude is amazing. He's got his own channel, and here he is gifting us a smaller channel. Thank you, Will. You're the man. Thank you so much. Olivia.
I think tomorrow should be very interesting. I think that actually, some people called out the judge or were mad at the judge for, I guess, cutting off the defense while they're in the middle of their cross-examination of Julie Albert to end the day today. But I actually think that that will be to their benefit, because they'll get to reiterate and re-emphasize some of those points starting back up in the morning tomorrow with her. And it will be a great thing to leave in the jurors' heads over the weekend, followed by Brian Albert and whoever else is called to the stand. So
His wife, apparently, too.
Yeah, Nicole Albert and Caitlin Albert, I believe.
Oh, Caitlin, too, is on the... Wow.
Yeah.
This could get really good, huh, Mark? Wow.
Yeah, my thought is, I guess tomorrow is going to be Groundhog Day, another day of the DA leading with their chin. I mean, could these chips be served up any worse? We have the hangover of Julie, who's going to, get clubbed with the Proctor text and everything else. So naturally, what I would want to do after she gets exposed for what they're trying to prove is, bring in the Grand Poobah of this alleged conspiracy, have him just get pummeled, followed by more of these people. And then, like Olivia just said, and let's end it perfectly by, sticking the landing on a Friday so everybody can think about it. And that's all anyone's going to be talking over the weekend. Obviously, the press stories are going to get worse and worse. And not that, someone like Lally cares about the press, but you know who does? The big guy in the corner office who said, let's do this.
Mm-hmm.
The DA.
And I got to tell you, I'm not entirely convinced this is going to get to a verdict.
I don't see. Yeah, it'd
What-
be
what do
crazy
you
if
think
she
will
just said no.
happen?
She throws it out, baby.
I don't think the judge would throw it out. I'm saying that if there comes a point, if you accept the
They just
fact
drop it.
that there's like 5 or 6 of these really troubled witnesses that are, in this whole world, and one after the next just gets pummeled, exposed, humiliated. I mean, look, you saw it on a very lower level with Katie, right? But that's small potatoes. You're seeing it a little more with the 2 Alberts today. It's humiliating. They're terrible witnesses. But they damaged their son, obviously, inadvertently. You're going to see Brian Albert get clobbered. Okay. And then, you haven't even hit Maccab yet with the deletions and the searches and all the other stuff. You haven't hit Higgins, my God, and
Federal
Proctor.
proper.
And so
Yep.
at what point do certain of these witnesses watch and say, no mas, like I'm done. I'm going to, take the 5th. And if that's what's happening, that's right. It probably won't, given how these people don't seem to care, that they're willing to just go in and say whatever they're going to say.
Yeah,
But
they have no shame.
They feel like they can fix anything. I think that's what it is. They've got away with it for so long, just fixing stuff.
It's crazy.
And it's like, yeah, I agree with you. It's like, it makes you wonder how much these people have gotten away with in the past because they're so brazen and so just nonchalant and shameless about it, it seems,
Yeah, it's pretty bad. Well, also, you weren't here a couple times ago or maybe you're listening, I don't know. There's zombie prosecutors, and that's the worst thing imaginable. You can't stop them. You can shoot them and it hits them and they just keep coming, and you can pummel. I mean, look at Lally. Every day he's just getting hit in the head, hitting the head. And you know what? He'll be back there tomorrow, toes tapping.
it's crazy.
Call the next one, and it's just going to keep happening every day. And until this case ends, you're not going to shame them. They're going to keep going.
And what's even crazier? The defense hasn't even started their case. They haven't even called any of their witnesses. I mean, their witness list has a lot of witnesses on it that are not on the prosecution's witness list. They're exclusive to the defense's case. I mean, who knows what bombshells are hiding in that? So I think there's a whole lot more to come.
I want to see the IT guy, Mike. That I want to see.
Yeah, the IT guy.
Oh yeah,
from the Canton community.
Oh gosh,
that's like go get popcorn.
Do you know anything about that, Olivia? Actually, I want to read this comment first before I ask that, but because I think it's funny. Who will Brian Albert punch tomorrow is funny. That was a great comment. But Olivia, like we were talking about Canton Community Television, I think you've heard the rumor that Higgins might have made a speech that was deleted at the request of Rafferty. Have you heard that rumor?
Okay, so I've been hearing a lot of people talking about that lately. Is it the thing from the retirement party?
Yes. Somebody on here, quote, said that one of the potential defense witnesses on the witness list is going to testify to that, and they're like a Canton IT person. Have you heard anything about that?
So I imagine it would so what I know about the Canton IT person would be oh gosh, I'm blanking on his name right now.
Tim?
But
Talking about Tim or somebody else?
Do you know the last name?
I just know Tim. I could look it up on my Facebook, maybe.
It's the guy who basically authenticated and verified the reliability of the time and date stamps on the town surveillance.
That's the guy.
Footage.
That's the guy they're talking about.
It's that same.
It's not
guy.
Tim though. No, that's a different guy. Tim is at Canton Community. I thought you were going to him, but no, I think whoever the person is who you just described. It's not Tim. Louis is their name.
Oh, Louis Jetras. Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
That's the one. Yep. Yeah. So in terms of his capacity for the trial, as I know it, he'd be called to testify to the authenticity and the authenticity of the surveillance camera footage from the the Canton Public Library, because that's a town building. I think the camera that was over at Pequiside Farm or whatever, even though they're not using it anymore.
Yep.
So, but yeah, I mean, it's entirely possible he's going to be called to testify about other things too, and that would be interesting if what you're saying is true.
Yeah, I'm not sure it
Very
is.
interesting.
I'm not sure it is because I think that sometimes people get things mixed up. You know what I mean? So I think that's how they got it mixed up.
Well,
So,
in this case, it could be easy to do that
exactly.
because there is so many
Exactly.
layers.
There is so much to remember and keep track of,
Mhm.
and then whether something's fact or rumor, you know, it's did you read it? Did you hear it? Did you see it in a court document? Who said it? Just gets a lot. I want to thank you both for being here tonight. Is there anything else that you didn't get out that you wanted to just raise before we leave here?
Never seen anything like this, but I tell you that every day. So maybe tomorrow will be different, but probably not.
I was just telling someone that today too. Like, it's so funny how you talk to like people in this space, and you're just like, I've never seen anything like this. It's just all my years.
Yeah, and that's why in part I understand why people who are green to the case or who are like new to the case and don't really know that much about it, all of the complexities and intricacies, I can understand why people coming into it don't believe it, like why they're quickly dismissive of it,
Exactly.
because it's so unbelievable. It's so unfathomable and it's so unbelievable. And every day it's like, you thought this stuff you saw yesterday was crazy. It's like, hold my beer,
Yeah,
they
every
just
day
keep
gets
outdoing
crazier.
themselves.
Right? Tomorrow
So
we got the big dog, Brian Albert. I mean, I guess it's gonna get crazier every day.
It's kind of funny too, and I mean, I can't see other than anything you see on TV, but from what the way it looks, the courtroom is so tiny. Everyone's on top
yeah.
of each other, and here comes this like big brute in the
Hulking
witness
guy.
stand, and they're all on top of each other, and just the tension, the physical tension in that
Oh
room.
my gosh.
Because, I mean, because he's just going to cut such a figure physically in such a little room. It's God.
I can feel the tension just watching it at home, like through the screen. I'm like, oh my God, especially when there's like a long sidebar and they pan in on Karen Reed, or they pan in on the gallery, and it's just, yeah, everybody is uncomfortably close to one another. I've never seen a courtroom set up like that either, where you've got the defense counsel just completely like flanked on all sides by
People.
the gallery,
It's
the
crazy.
jury.
I did think of
Yeah.
something else to a question that was posed earlier. You said, who do you think Brian will hit, if he's going to hit anyone?
Yeah.
I think Grant.
Grant Smith Ellis?
Yeah.
Why would he hit Grant? Isn't he?
Because he's going to try to interview him or something crazy.
He's gonna get up in his face.
That'd probably be the wrong guy.
Grant, I'll buy you Dunkin' Donuts later.
I don't want him to hit anyone, obviously.
I don't think he's going to go after Grant because
No,
Grant's been harassing Turtle Boy.
I don't think he's going to go after anyone. We're all
yeah. Well, that would be something though. I would love to see that one.
Someone might though. After that display he put on outside the courthouse, like
his line,
that was out of control.
When he says his line,
condone violence, but like that's bound to provoke something from someone.
Crazy. He's a crazy man. When he said his line, I was thinking of this stuff.
Oh no. Yeah, insane.
All right, I want to thank you all for being here tonight. Thank you, Olivia Lambeau.
Thanks,
people
Mike.
can follow you on Twitter, right? X.
Yep. Yeah, at Olivia Lambeau.
Thank you so much for being here, and thank you, Mark Bederow, attorney, Bederow Law on Twitter, and his website, bederowlaw.com. I got that right?
You did? Yep.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for being here. You both of you guys, thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good one.
You too.
Have a good night.
You too. And I want to thank our donations tonight. I just want to read off. I'm having trouble keeping up with the super chats. I want to thank you all for donating tonight, because I don't know if we got to read them all. And StreamYard's weird. If we don't catch them right as they come up, we miss them. So I hope I didn't miss any. I want to thank you all for donating tonight. I also want to check out The Venmo, because I saw a couple Venmos come in. I want to thank you for the Venmo donations as well. And Cash App. And if you have any final comments you want to leave, you can definitely do so right now for me. I'll be checking those out. Paul just sent $20. He said, for Mark Bederow's commentary on the Cash App. Thank you so much, Paul. That's on the Cash App and the Venmo. We got a donation from Melissa. She said, I just want to show my appreciation for your daily and nightly coverage of this case. I love your station. Thank you so much. Christina sent $20. She says, I love this collaboration. Thank you so much. Jim Kelly sent $25. He said, gift. Thank you so much. That's it on the Cash App and Venmo tonight. I want to thank you all for donating. I want to see if we're at 10,000. I don't think we are, but we're close. I know we're going to get to 10,000 like either tonight or tomorrow. Let's see where we're at right now. We were getting really close. Please subscribe if you haven't, because we're trying to get to this big goal. 10,000 on YouTube. We're at 9,932. Let me refresh it, because sometimes it doesn't update unless you do close it out. So let me just check one more time. Yes. Oh my God, we're even closer. 9,978. We got 22 more people. So if there's 22 people out there tonight, please hit it. I want to celebrate that tonight. I want to have a nice little celebration on Friday night, maybe Saturday morning. Let's just call it 10,000. I mean, we really can't because we're 22 away. But yeah, 10,000 is huge on YouTube. Thank you so much, everyone. We got over 10,000 on Facebook. Now we're going to have 10,000 on YouTube. We're almost getting there on X too. So please sub us everywhere. The Young Jerks. And like and comment and all that. Thank you so much, everyone. We'll see you again. I guess, yeah, we're going to be streaming tomorrow morning. I just want to say we have been streaming the trial throughout. I know a lot of people count on us for it. I just want to let you know we may not be streaming every part of the trial. It's just sometimes it's not possible. We got a copyright strike yesterday because I didn't turn off the stream in time. So sometimes when I'm walking dogs, I just let that stream go. And if I'm not there to shut it off in time, that's when we're getting a copyright strike, because they switch it over to copyrighted content, which sucks. So we're having an issue with that. So I may not be able to stream every single court hearing, unfortunately, but I will tomorrow. I just want to give you guys warning because I don't want to disappoint people. There's plenty of other places. If we have to shut it down early, just know that's why. I don't want to lose the channel over it. And I want you guys to be aware of that, why I'm taking that. I may not be able to stream everything. So thank you so much for supporting. We just had Sherry D just made a contribution, $19.99. Thank you so much for the super chat. And Rachel Davis said, great show, Mike. And someone said, no worries. Yes, because, you can. It's not like we're the only place you can watch it. There are a lot of other people who are streaming, and it's on TV as well. So, but I'm going to stream most of it. So don't give up on me. I'm going to definitely stream tomorrow. Tomorrow's a slower day. I'll be able to be back and forth and handle it. Like Monday is the day I'm worried about. Monday is probably the day I may shut it down a little early. Oh, you guys are telling me to check again. 10,000. We just did it. Whoa, yeah. You guys are all excited. Refresh. Congratulations. See, I knew if I stuck around a little longer, you guys would give me 10,000. Thank you so much. We need to ring a bell or something. Dong. Ding. Thank you guys so much. We just hit 10,000. Amazing. Amazing. I'm smiling. Someone else noticed last night that I guess my camera was smudged, my lens. I was wondering why. I thought it was like a bad camera or something. And then tonight I cleaned it up and I was like, oh my God, the camera actually isn't bad. Instead, it was smudged all that time. So thank you guys for noticing that too. Does it look better? Does my picture look better tonight? I think so. Yeah, big smiles. I'm smiling. We got 10,000, baby. Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you guys so much for getting us there tonight. Now on to 11,000, but 10. I mean, you can't beat 10. Yeah, I'm wicked happy. 10,000. I love all the comments too. You guys are very happy. As happy as I am. I said I was wrapping up, but no, I can't because all the comments. Almost 1,000 likes tonight, too. On to 20K. Yeah, exactly. There's always another goal. 10,000 is a big one, though. I know a lot of YouTube creators that I work that been on the show, and they always all said that once you get to your first 10,000, it's a big, you kind of made it. That's when they said, a lot of people feel like they've officially made it was when they have 10,000 subs. It seems real then. Sherry D just gave another $9.99. Says congratulations. Thank you so much, Sherry. Yeah, it is a big milestone. And it was a good show tonight. And the big thing is free Karen Reed. That's where we're at, right? We're just gonna keep streaming. I'm gonna keep streaming. I'm gonna keep doing shows at night until we know Karen Reed isn't gonna go to jail. So we'll be back tomorrow. We'll see everyone tomorrow. Thank you so much for the support. Thank you for 10,000. It's amazing. Have a great night, everyone. We'll see you tomorrow, Friday morning. Free Karen Reed.